So social media firms are to face major fines if they fail to stop underage children using their platforms. We'll speak to the Culture Secretary in the next hour as the government prepares to unveil the revamped online safety bill.
And the Prime Minister has used his first major foreign policy address to say that China poses a threat to the UK's values, but added that the country's significance in the world cannot be ignored. He also reiterated the government's support for Ukraine hours after meeting with the country's First Lady.
It's been dubbed the Battle of Britain as England and Wales go head-to-head tonight in the World Cup. The Dragons have to beat the Three Lions to have any chance of making it through to the next stage.
And we'll go to Llanymanic, try saying that later on tonight, a village that's half in England and half in Wales, to find out if tensions are high ahead of tonight's big showdown.
So get in touch the usual way. We love to hear from you throughout the programme. Tweet us or email us, gbnews@gbnews.uk. And don't forget to let us know where you're watching or listening to us from.
To our top story, the Culture Secretary has warned social media companies that they will face multi-million-pound fines unless they stop underage children accessing their services.
The move forms part of the government's revamped online safety bill, which will be unveiled today following a series of delays.
The new version of the bill has also dropped controversial plans to put restrictions on content deemed legal but harmful.
Well, joining us now for more analysis is the Deputy Editor of the online newspaper CapX, Alice Denby. Good morning to you.
Morning.
It feels like we've been talking about this online safety bill, for as long as I can remember, half a decade or so. But significant changes are being made. And do you think that they will go through and that they are the right changes?
I think it's worth zooming out to where this bill started from. It was in response to the very tragic and awful suicide of a 14-year-old girl, Molly Russell, and this made the government feel something must be done about what children are doing online. And since then it's spiralled into kind of trying to break up big tech, trying to on the one hand promote and on the other hand kind of prevent people being offended by content online. So it's taken on a lot of different aspects, and I think this is yet another kind of incarnation. They seem to be pivoting back to the focus on child protection. My worry here is that responding in this way to an awful but rare event is a bad basis on which to be making legislation. And I'm also a bit concerned that we might be behaving a bit like sort of parents in the 50s that were worried about the moral threat of Elvis Presley. Because, you know, we didn't grow up with this kind of technology, but kids today are far more savvy about it than we are. I think it's natural as parents to be worried about what our children are doing online, but is there a risk of going too far?
Yeah, and I'm going to be really curious to speak to Ms Donnellan about this, because I've spoken with 50,000 kids across Britain about the threats of online pornography, and simply what they tell me all the time is they know how to get around all these things. Children are much more tech savvy than adults. Is this just nanny state politics and it's really going to be ineffective?
I think there's an aspect of that. I think there's also an aspect of parental responsibility here. I mean, I saw a statistic that something like 30% of 5-year-olds have social media accounts. I mean, clearly their parents are helping them to do that and their parents are giving them phones. So I do think that there's an aspect of the state trying to put a genie back in the bottle when it comes to big tech. And there's a risk here. Michelle Donnellan spoke in her Telegraph article about wanting to sort of break up the power of Silicon Valley, but actually this is going to have the opposite effect, because it's going to be the big companies like Meta and Google that are able to have the lawyers and the compliance officers needed, and smaller competitors that might come in and challenge them won't be able to do that. So
but as you say in your first answer about the need to zoom out and the rarity of the case of Molly Russell, I mean, it was the Children's Commissioner recently talking about the high percentage of 11 to 15-year-olds who had witnessed decapitations online, and the access to porn now being of children of primary school age being commonplace, 75% of under 11-year-olds having seen it. The idea that we have to protect freedoms above what our children are seeing. A lot of people, particularly people who are concerned about children's welfare, say we have no idea what the implications will be on our young in 20 to 30 years' time, and we'll probably be a bit like with the smoking ban, look back on it and think, how on earth did we not address this more rapidly sooner?
But there's also a chance that we might look back and think, was this all a moral panic, that, you know, technology changes but human nature doesn't change, and that we are going too far. But I do think that it's welcome that, as I said, Michelle Donnellan seems to be pivoting back to the original intention of the bill, being about protecting children and not about policing speech online. She's changed this provision about legal but harmful speech, so it's no longer going to be as I understand, a case of the platforms having to remove it. There's going to be options to filter it out for adults. So I think that's welcome. But again, I also think that that's a consequence of the kind of troubled progress of this bill. It's been through so many different incarnations. How confident is the government that this is the version that's going to make it through when so many previous versions haven't?
As well as children lying their way around this and just bluffing about their age and parents helping out with accounts, isn't this just a case of, prohibition never works? If you tell a kid they can't do something, they tend to go and do it immediately in even greater numbers. Isn't a more sensible solution to have a conversation about critical consumption? But that's too awkward for the government, isn't it?
I do. Again, I think that there's this idea of personal responsibility within families and for parents to have these kind of conversations with their children. And that's a difficult thing for the government to be talking about. Far easier to say it's big tech's fault, it's Silicon Valley. How
can the tech companies themselves police this? But how are they meant to know the age of people coming in unless they start asking for things like ID? And surely that's a whole can of worms then about the extra data they hold about people.
Yeah, I do worry about how this is going to work in practice. I'm sure every parent would like it to be the case that if a site is for over 18s only, then their kids can't access it. But as you say, how do you police this?
Let's talk about China, shall we? Because last night Rishi Sunak was at the Lord Mayor's banquet and he gave his first indication, really, of his foreign policy vision and a big sort of step away from the Osborne-Cameron era of friendly relations with China. We've seen what's been happening in recent days with these huge objections, protests against the severe lockdowns that have been happening there. Rishi Sunak calling it the golden era of UK-China relations being over and a threat, actually, to British values.
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult for us sitting here to talk about China. I can't claim to be an expert on it, but as an observer, I do think Britain and the West have been naive about trade with China and the belief that if you just opened up, then naturally, the kind of arc of history would bend towards democracy. But I also think that China itself has changed. If you think back to the 2008, the Beijing Olympics, when China was opening itself up to the world, it had, Ai Weiwei working on the stadium. He's now a dissident exile. China has, like all authoritarian regimes always do, doubled down and become more and more hardline. But the history of authoritarian regimes also tells us that they always fail. And they don't necessarily always become perfect liberal democracies, but they always fail in the end. And I think perhaps we can hope that we might be seeing the start of something like that in China.
And to use the language of the online safety bill, don't you think it's fair to say that Britain has had a very coercive, controlling relationship with China for a long time? We rely on them for products, for cheap stuff, but they completely abuse human rights. They beat up journalists. They pollute the planet more than anybody else. They don't turn up to COP27, and they really are a bully. I think this is about 10 years overdue.
Yeah, I find it quite frustrating as an observer when Western countries talk about, human rights abuses while at the same time being completely dependent on Chinese imports. And we do have to be realistic here. 1 in 8 people in the entire world is Chinese. We have to have a relationship with them. I think it's a shame that we've allowed them to use trade as a kind of weapon when it comes to things like semiconductors and communications. But I think we have to be realistic that China is far more powerful than Russia. We can't simply isolate it with sanctions. We do have to have a relationship with it. And if there is going to be change when it comes to human rights and so on in China, that is going to come from inside China. It is not going to become as a result of outside pressure.
All right, Alice Denby, thank you for your overview of this morning's top political stories. Thank you very much.
Fascinating stuff.
Absolutely,
really is.
Yeah. Should we talk football now?
Yes.
It's a big day,
yeah,
isn't
let's
it?
do
You
that.
excited?
I'm very excited. And here's the thing, as an Englishman, I hope the Welsh do well. I do, because I'd rather Wales and England get through than any of the competitors. I'm expecting loads of abusive comments about that. But in the name of British national harmony, go on the Welsh.
Really?
Yeah.
You're not supporting your home team in the World Cup. You really do court controversy, don't you?
I'm being a unionist
Controversy
here.
Daubney. I love it. Well, look, of course, you get the idea there. England are taking on Wales tonight. This is the first time they've actually met in a World Cup before.
And England simply need to avoid defeat in their final group game. Again, that's easier said than done. To qualify for the next round, but Wales must secure a 4-goal margin over their domestic rivals and rely on Iran and the USA drawing to make it to the next round.
Well, here's what some fans had to say ahead of that crunch game later today.
Yeah, it's really important. We need a win. 100% we need a win. And unfortunately, we've got to do you over. But yeah, the start is a bit disheartening. But it is what it is.
I don't think so, no. I think there'll be a bit of squad rotation and there'll be a big performance to silence the critics of Gareth Southgate, I reckon.
Yeah. I mean, but how much are you looking forward to it? Because even if there was nothing riding on it, it'd still be a big game anyway.
Oh, massive game, massive game. Yeah. Like, when are we going to see this again? It's been 64 years for us. And to play England in the World Cup, a home nation, is a big thing anyway. Yeah. So I think we just enjoy the moment anyway.
How long have you guys been friends?
Well, we work together. We've been friends for quite a bit.
Yeah. Before the draw was made, were you working together? So instantly you said, right, okay. Are you still going to be able to work together after this?
Depends on the result.
See,
you're bragging right.
I know. There's sourness on that side. No matter what happens, 100%. No animosity. Good game, hopefully, and may the underdogs win. Really.
Yeah.
You can feel the excitement reaching fever pitch. Well, for more on this and the other big stories from the World Cup is sports broadcaster and my old mucker, Aidan McGee. Top of the morning.
Morning.
How you doing? Okay, nice to see you.
Good.
Big day.
Talk us through the various permutations and algorithms we need for Wales to get through, Aidan.
So for Wales to get through, USA and Iran, the other two teams in the group, have to draw, first of all. Don't forget, on the final round of group games, everybody kicks off at the same time because it's deemed to be an advantage if you go into a game knowing what you already have to do because of a result earlier on. So in the last 20-odd years in football, we've had whenever this situation rises, everyone kicks off simultaneously. So that's the first thing. USA and Iran have to draw. They're the other two teams in the group. If Wales then beat England, that is enough to take Wales through. England will go through as well by virtue of having 4 points. So the only other way that Wales can go through in the event that USA and Iran beat one another, or one of those teams wins, is if Wales beat England by 4-0. I would think that's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
But the only way that's more simply, I think it's doable. It's possible for England to lose to Wales and Iran and USA to draw. They're not high scorers, those two. So it's possible to expect a draw out of that. It's a big ask to expect Wales to beat England tonight, I think. But, I mean, even the way the manager's talking, Gerard Page, he said, it'd be good. I think the quote he said was something like, it'd be good to finish off with a flourish or something. I mean, if he's saying things like that, it means that he's expecting to go home, isn't it? That's what I think.
Yeah, but defeat is that sort of a case of David versus Goliath? I mean, there's always the chance the underdog could win in this. I mean, if you do it in just the hard facts of what the teams were. I was reading this morning that the England squad are worth 1.5 billion euros versus the Welsh team being 181 million.
Yeah.
So in that case, it really,
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, you're talking about England's a big sporting nation. I mean, there have only been 2 tournaments in my lifetime that England haven't qualified for. I mean, they haven't won any of them. We won't mention that. But this is Wales' first World Cup since 1958, 64 years. They have more recently been qualifying for tournaments. They qualified for 2 Euros, once in 2016 and 2020. So the trajectory has been upwards. There's no question about that. Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey criticised for the first two performances. They're not carrying the Wales side as they probably were back in 2016, just because they're that bit older. They're coming towards the end of their careers and their performance has probably waned slightly, but they need big performances from those two tonight if they're going to get through. Big one for England as well in terms of, even though it's very unlikely they won't qualify, a defeat or a draw would leave more pressure on Southgate. Let's be in no doubt about that. Does Phil Foden come back in? This is what's interesting, right? He came on the 71st minute of the first game. Always the most important player is the one who's not playing. That's just the way we are, it must be someone new and different must come in and change everything. I bet Phil Foden, if he comes in tonight, then if he doesn't have a great game, someone will say that someone else who's been left out is the answer in future. It's just how we are as a nation, isn't it?
And we were going through the papers earlier. I don't know if you can see that there, but we think that's the headline of the day. It's do or die.
Do or die.
That's almost
exactly.
back to the 90s with its
without doubt.
racism.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm sure. In ways, there's no war references or anything like that. But
no, we'll give it time.
But listen, it's a really decent game tonight to finish. There's something riding on it. We didn't want, but I'd like to see Wales go through.
Yeah.
Not you as well.
I
Staunch Nottingham man.
I know, but
and now you.
What about your husband?
Well, yeah, my husband's allowed to support his home country, but I'll support mine, which is England. Unlike you two.
You probably want Wales out, so you get your husband
Well,
back.
that's true, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd like Wales out, so exactly.
I mean, the other good quote from Rob Page, the Wales manager, said we're going to have to put our big boy pants on tonight. So I think he means that it's about time they turned in a performance, because they have been very disappointing in the first 2 games, Wales. But we have had situations before where teams have performed badly in the first 2 matches and then squeezed in through the back door with the last fixture. So I think it'd be good for the country if both teams went through. I don't think Iran and USA bring a lot to the tournament, if I'm perfectly honest with you. They're both fairly conservative teams. I mean, that's quite a politically charged fixture in itself, Iran against USA. I remember they played in 1998, and it was the first time they'd played in football for donkey's years, and they spent about half an hour in the centre circle before the game just making apologies to each other for everything that had gone on for the previous 50 years.
I'm sure the England fans would be hoping for a much better performance than that frankly dire 4-draw against USA on Friday, but Southgate probably will still go cautiously at this game, won't he?
Well, look, he could. I think it's a chance to change formation. It's a chance to look at other players. He did say it's a squad game. He said you'll see all these players, but he said that we're not here to hand out caps like confetti. Remember the Sven-Göran Eriksson era when it seemed that if you just put your hand up, you get a cap for England. I mean, he devalued the institution, and he devalued the office of playing for your country. Gareth Southgate is taking it more back to the Bobby Robson's era. Rely on the players that have delivered for you in tournaments. Yes, there might be a player, an outlier in form somewhere, but hang on a minute, playing at a tournament is the biggest pressure you'll get as a footballer in an international tournament. Anyway, there's a whole world of difference between playing for England and playing for one of the club teams. There's only one team that makes us go out and buy a barbecue from Tesco on a Saturday morning, and that's England. We don't do that if it's Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea or Arsenal.
Yeah, fair point. All right, Aidan Vicky, thank you very much
Good to see you.
indeed.
Cheers, mate.
Let us know who you'll be supporting tonight and whether or not you're going to be a bit of a turncoat as well. One village on the border between England and Wales, perfect really for those who are torn over their allegiances in the home nations derby. And our reporter Jack Carson has been to Llanymanic to find out more.
Last time England and Wales came up against each other competitively, it was an injury-time goal from Daniel Sturridge that gave the Three Lions bragging rights. Now it's match day for the two sides in Qatar. The people watching the game in Llanymanic will have a different experience to most.
When England play Wales at a major tournament, it's always going to be a tight affair. But in this village, things can get a little bit too close for comfort, when right now I'm in England, but one step puts me in Wales.
The border of the two nations zigzags down the main road through the village, and the owner of this pub has Wales right outside his window. He says the World Cup has been a mixed experience.
It's been great. The atmosphere has been fantastic for the English games and for the Welsh games. It's been a little bit different, obviously being a Winter World Cup. We would normally have obviously the doors open, everyone outside and music playing. Plus obviously with the games being at 10 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the moment. Again, unless people are booking time off work, it's become very difficult. But if anything, what it's probably done is it made it a little bit more intimate, where everyone's inside. It's a little bit, we're shutting the doors, getting the heating on and making it nice and warm. And it's really helped to, obviously, with the atmosphere. And like I said, is for the 4 games that we've had so far with the 2 English and the 2 Welsh, it's been fantastic.
Not everyone in this village is as keen to engage with Qatar 2022. The owner of the village shop on the Wales side says the controversy around the tournament has clouded his support for the home teams.
Where it's being held, the lack of women's rights, the slavery allegations, the homophobia, the lack of basic human rights in Qatar, really. So it's been a bit difficult sort of getting behind it, but we'll support the nations. I suppose we support England and Wales here, but,
This is a close-knit community, and a home nations derby won't split this village into harsh rivals. But after their loss to Iran, it's going to be hard for Wales to reach the next stage.
Wales have to beat England and hope other results go their way for them to make the knockout stages. Otherwise, the sun could well be setting on their World Cup tournament. This one, though, nobody can predict, because it all happens on the pitch. It's England versus Wales tonight, and anything could happen.
Jack Carson, GB News.
I mean, it was a goal, but I don't think it's going to make the squad.
Not about it. I actually know Llanymanic. I lived in Oswestry during the by-election last year. And did you know, here's some pub trivia, there's a pub in the village where one half of it is in England and one half of it is in Wales. So during the football tonight, you can literally take either end.
Oh, if only it was down the road. We could go and watch it tonight there.
Great part of the
perhaps you're watching from Llanymynech this morning. Let us know if you'll be in that pub. We'd love to hear your stories. Right, time 6:19. Let's bring you up to date with our top stories this morning.
The government is reviewing plans to fast-track the removal of asylum seekers from designated safe countries. The Times reports that Home Secretary Suella Braverman is looking to resurrect a Labour policy which would mean most asylum claims from whitelist countries would be rejected.
The Met Police has launched a new anonymous hotline for people reporting corrupt or abusive officers. It follows a series of scandals, including the rape and murder of Sarah Everard by a serving officer. The force has come under heavy criticism over failures in both its anti-corruption and disciplinary procedures, which have left hundreds of officers still in post.
Climate change and urbanisation could put hundreds of thousands more homes at high risk of flooding in the coming decades. A report by the National Infrastructure Commission is warning 600,000 more homes in England could be at risk over the next 30 years. It's calling for £12 billion of investment in drainage systems and stricter controls on property developments.
Now, Christmas is just around the corner. I don't know if you've got your tree up yet, have you?
No, I'd try and leave it late because I'm quite tight. I don't like the needles dropping.
Yeah, I don't believe in putting a tree up before December at the earliest, but I still, like you, I used to wait until the kids broke up from school.
But they're always dead
probably
by Christmas.
Do it before then, you need a fake one, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, we're talking Christmas carols this morning. A new study, a shocking study, it must be said, shows that more than half of 18 to 20-year-olds choose to put on a classic festive pop song than listen to Christmas carols.
Yeah, this feels like one of those it's the end of the world as we know it stories, because a really shocking thing here is 46% of 18 to 29s have never even sung a Christmas carol. What are they playing at?
Yeah, unbelievable. And a third had never sung the likes of Silent Night, Good King Wenceslas, Little Donkey or In the Bleak Midwinter. Now, I could probably sing off by heart every single lyric to all of those.
I think I'd have a good stab as well, yeah.
Do you know, look, even if you're not a churchgoer, I mean, I went to church as a child, also sang hymns at school, which doesn't happen at my children's school at all. You could go at Christmas and get involved in the Christmas celebrations and have a good sing-song. Yeah. In Bath, the Abbey there, you've got the Christmas market and all the shops, and you can go for 15-minute carol services.
Yeah, lovely.
Which is perfect. Just factor it into your little shop around and get in the Christmas spirit. Yeah, a little bit of real meaning of Christmas.
Is this, I wonder, a reflection of multicultural Britain where these carols and hymns are no longer sung at schools?
Yeah.
And multi-faith approach means that Christianity is sort of withering away.
Oh, it's really sad. Yeah, so let us know, are you an ardent carol singer like we are?
Yes.
Or perhaps you would prefer a bit of Slade's Merry Christmas, Everybody instead? Not for me.
Still there. They've got to come up with some new songs, Liz.
Yeah, I know, that's true.
It's the same stuff.
Although, which is your favourite Christmas pop song? I love a bit of George Michael.
Yeah, I'll go for a bit of Georgie. Yeah, yeah.
So let us know what you'll be singing this Christmas or whether you're just not into music at all. Keep your thoughts coming in. We're going to take a break after that. We're going to speak to Royal and Showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield as the Prince and Princess of Wales prepare to jet off to Boston for the Earthshot Awards. First, though, here's your forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. We've not had many mornings like this morning so far in the autumn. It's a chilly start, frost out there for many, low cloud, mist and fog, and it's dry as well with this ridge of high pressure across the country. Isobars opened out, so light winds, and weather front staying well away for the time being. So for many of us, although it is a grey and misty start, it is also dry. A lot of low cloud has persisted through central and eastern areas, and further west, even though sunshine is in greater supply, there are also here some mist and fog patches. And where we do get some fog at this time of year, the sun being weak, some of it could last well into the afternoon, if not remain all day. Otherwise, where we do get some sunshine coming through, 11, 12 Celsius in the south, 6 to 9 Celsius further north, feeling pleasant enough with light winds. And for the vast majority, it does stay dry. Just 1 or 2 showers affecting parts of Kent, perhaps East Anglia as well, around coastal areas. The dry weather continues overnight. Again, we'll see a lot of low cloud through central and eastern areas. And where we don't see the low cloud, we'll see mist, fog and frost patches forming. So it'll be a chilly start again tomorrow morning. But having said that, it's going to be a bit milder in parts of Northern Ireland because here we've got cloudier skies moving in, a bit more of a breeze coming through, and some spots of rain, not much really, affecting western and northern parts of Northern Ireland and then into the Western Isles. Elsewhere across the UK, after any early mist and fog lifts gradually, there will be some sunshine, particularly in the south and around western fringes away from Northern Ireland. Temperatures up to 9 to 10 Celsius in the south, 5 to 7 in the north. So feeling a little bit colder, and that cooling trend continues. But what we're also going to see later this week is higher pressure over Scandinavia, exerting its influence over the UK, leading to drier weather, just some few showers coming in from the east, but also colder conditions.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, We're
on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Oh, Christmas gets you going, doesn't it? We've had one in from David Hender. Hi, Isabel and Martin. I have an artificial tree, and it's been up since last Christmas. The lights cheer me up.
It's been on all year.
All year?
Oh, but no, that's
dedicated.
dedicated.
My goodness. And then Tony Milne-Hall has got in touch to say, if you don't attend church, how would you know Christmas carols? How many 18 to 25-year-olds attend church? Sadly, not as many as there used to be.
Yes, fair point.
And then Patrick McFarlane says, bar humbug, it is panto season. Anyway, I won't read all of that. But yeah, thank you very much for keep those thoughts coming in this morning. We love to hear from you on all of the topics, not just Christmas.
So it is now 6:28. Still to come on today's programme.
Just before 7, we'll be speaking to the Culture Secretary, Michelle Donlan, who is warning social media companies to do more to protect children or pay the price.
And as the cost of driving skyrockets, some enterprising people are choosing to rent out their cars for some extra cash. We'll find out how to do that at 7:20.
Yeah, so you've heard of Airbnb, but now you can kind of do it with your car. I've never heard of this.
Share it out,
really
rent it out, why not?
Keep your thoughts coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk.
The Prince and Princess of Wales will fly to Boston this week as part of their commitment to environmental awareness.
And they will host the Earthshot Prize, which reports that there are no plans to meet with Harry or Meghan, who we understand are also on the East Coast in the next week.
That's it, it's a big story there. Royal and showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield joins us stateside for more. Morning.
Good morning. That's right. We're so excited that you're sharing the Prince and Princess of Wales with us. I mean, I know, Isabel, I know you're so jealous. I'm going to be in Boston. I'm going to see our girl, Kate, and I'm going to yell, Isabel and Kinsey, love you.
Totally. Please do. So listen, this is a big deal for the Walesers. This is, you know, their fourth baby, essentially, the Earthshot Prize, particularly the Prince of Wales. He'll want all the attention to be very much on that. But undoubtedly, one of the reasons we're talking to you this morning is because of all the controversy around his brother. None of that relationship seems to be patched up. There's all the fear of the Netflix series, the book, and now this Ripple of Hope Award, which is taking place on the East Coast next week as well.
That's right. This is really unfortunate timing for Prince William because, like you said, this is his Super Bowl. This is so much work, and this is a tangible initiative that he created. In 10 years, he wants to be able to look at some of these people that they've given these grants to. He wants those things to have come to fruition. They're looking to repair the earth and repair the environment, and that's something that's really admirable. And unfortunately, we are looking at Harry and Meghan and this ridiculous award that the RFK Foundation is handing to them, the Ripple of Hope Award, which Kerry Kennedy said was being given to them for them fighting the structural racism within the royal family. And I think that that really likely hurts the royal family. I'm sure that hearing that is disappointing to them, especially when they're working with Caroline Kennedy in Boston. And I know that William and Catherine are not going to let it get to them. They're going to stay focused, and they're going to, you know, envelop the American people, and they're going to, I'm sure, enjoy their time in Boston. But I truly don't think that Harry and Meghan live rent-free in their head. I think that they're very focused on these opportunities that they've created for themselves. And I think that they're an inconvenience, but they're not their focus.
Some would say, wouldn't they, that the proof of Meghan being accepted into the royal family is proof that there isn't systemic racism. And I wonder stateside if the Earthshot event is going to start to see Team Wills versus Team Harry stateside as well. I mean, who's more popular?
I think popularity-wise, you do see the Prince and Princess of Wales have a much stronger hold here in the States, and that was not always the case. But we went through years now of Harry and Meghan complaining. And like I said about William, there is tangible change with William. He creates these initiatives where you see these results. And with Harry and Meghan, it's a lot of talk. It's a lot of complaining, podcasting about words you don't like. I really don't know what the ultimate objective is there. And I do think that Americans are excited to see William and Catherine. And to us, it's the first time we've seen real royalty in a very long time, because I don't think that that's how we define Harry and Meghan.
Tell me, is there any money involved in the Ripple of Hope Award? Because I'm trying to think, what is in it? What do they gain from accepting this? It's so obvious it's going to deepen the rift between the brothers. If I was Harry and Meghan, no matter what my views were, I would walk away. I wouldn't get involved. And I wanted to talk about, as well as that question, you know, Fergie is a perfect example. She fell out with the royal family. She embarrassed them, humiliated them. Anyone who's watched this season of The Crown will be reliving all of those scandals. But she's been invited to spend Christmas with the royals again. There is a way back. You don't have to go down this route.
You're absolutely right. I think that Fergie is a great example of forgiveness within the royal family. When it comes to this particular award, this award is managed, or I should say represented, by a PR company that Harry and Meghan have worked with a lot over the years. It's the same PR company that represents the NAACP Awards, which was another bizarre participation trophy that Harry and Meghan walked off with that had left us all scratching our heads. I think that this is a strategy that Harry and Meghan have to generate publicity for themselves and to give themselves credibility and to try to brand themselves away from the royal family. But it doesn't help when Kerry Kennedy releases a statement talking negatively about the royal family. So I do think that this is all a PR strategy that's not properly thought out, you know, consequence-wise. And, you know, I mean, William's going to be hanging out with Billie Eilish. Harry's going to be hanging out with Alec Baldwin. I would rather die in a fire than be in a room with Meghan Markle and Alec Baldwin. So, I mean, I think Prince William wins in the end, no matter what.
Oh my goodness, I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, that was top notch.
Perfect. We can't beat that. Kinsey, lovely to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, that was great. Yeah, it's really heartening, actually, to see that Harry and Meghan are losing the popularity contest on home soil. It's a real class shows
Well,
through.
I think they've finally been seen to be doing down the royal family. And I think the wake of the death of Her Majesty the Queen really reminded everybody how much affection they hold the royal family. And they do well to take notice. And I just don't accept the award. It's a no-brainer.
It is utterly ridiculous. The more we think about it, the worse it gets.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even wait until the night of the events. I would come out and say, we're not going. Yeah. I reject it, not involved. And that would draw a line under it. Oh, so obvious. We're going to take a break. After that, we're going to go through the papers today. We're joined by Norman Baker and Emily Carver. See you in a sec.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 6:37. Before we go onto the front pages, some GB views have come in.
Yeah, lots of them. John on the football saying the Chancellor would love a Wales win tonight. It'll keep the bars and clubs booming. That's fair enough. The further they go in the tournament, the more it generates much needed revenue.
And John is cutting straight to the chase here. I made the terrible mistake of watching the England and USA game the first time since the England team went woke and started virtue signalling. I won't fall for that again today. John's going to abstain. Conscientious objector.
And Michael says, I'm sure it's very possible that Wales could beat England, yet not by the 4-goal margin to stay in the World Cup. I think you're probably right, Michael. Right, let's bring you up to date with the front pages of your Tuesday morning newspapers. Here's the Telegraph. It's talking about that online harms bill. They say social media firms are cracking down on children's accounts.
And the Sun, probably quite predictably, leads on the football with the words do or die. Nice bit of 1990s racism there. Covering the upcoming World Cup match between England and Wales, which kicks off 7 o'clock tonight.
Meanwhile, the Eye covers the growing Tory rebellion over onshore wind, a challenge to Rishi Sunak's authority.
And the Express says the NHS is paying out millions to send Brits abroad to receive routine treatments as waiting times soar in the UK.
And the Mail criticises Keir Starmer's plans to cut the charitable status of private schools, and we will ask a member of the Shadow Cabinet about that later on in the programme.
And it's time for my favourite part of the show now. We're diving inside the papers and joined today by the former Liberal Democrats Minister Norman Baker and Conservative Home columnist Emily Carver. Norman, we'll kick off with you, shall we? Not about the football, but China. It's all kicking off between Rishi Sunak and China, isn't it?
Well, it does. It depends what paper you're reading, actually, because the Guardian front page has got Sunak warning over China as she continues to crack down on protests, whereas the Financial Times says Sunak favours engagement with China, which is not quite the same story. I mean, the reality is that British government policy since about 2007, 2008 has chopped and changed wildly over China. You know, I remember when the Labour government sought to curry favour with China by accepting Tibet was part of China, which it isn't, of course. It's been annexed illegally. Then we had the so-called golden era beginning in about 2013 with George Osborne saying we must make China our best friend. Before that, David Cameron had been meeting the Dalai Lama, and in fact that was received very badly by Beijing. So as ministers, I was banned actually from meeting the Dalai Lama, as was Tim Lawton, the children's minister at the time, because they didn't want to upset the Chinese. Now we've got a situation where Sunak's U-turning again. The reality is we have to deal with China. It's, you know, the biggest power in the world apart from the US. But actually we don't like dealing with the Beijing government because they're full of really nasty people who are carrying appalling human rights abuses in Tibet, in Xinjiang, which is very close to it. I use the word advisedly, I use it legally, very close to genocide, what's happening in those parts of the world.
But also, I mean, yes, of course, the genocide as well, but on a more human level, the very strict lockdowns, the zero COVID policy, which we've all proved in the West hasn't been necessary with proper vaccination, which they haven't carried out adequately in China. I think a huge number of over 65s haven't had their booster jab, which is why they're keeping them all locked up. And it's inhumane, hence all these protests.
It is inhumane, and it's interesting that despite the oppressive police state which China is, people have come out on the streets and are calling for Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party to be deposed, which is extraordinary behaviour, because when they'll get arrested and put in prison for a very long time for that in that country. But, you know, we had our own lockdown over here, of course. We had restrictions which some of us thought were excessive at the time. And the reality is, you know, governments cannot control viruses, and there is a policy to get through it. And what happened in this country was ultimately that the virus took hold and sort of worn itself out. And that's what has to happen, and it'll have to happen in China. They cannot ban the virus forever.
Yeah, but Emily, how does a country have engagement with a country that they recognise and condemn as a threat?
Well, different people have different strategies. Some people would argue that you need to have a softly approach in order to try and influence the way that people in China think, and therefore how they influence their government, so through universities, through cultural programmes and so on. Others would want a more hard-line approach. And what's quite interesting is that Rishi Sunak only a couple of weeks ago was being lambasted in the media for going soft on China, so clearly he's had a bit of a change of heart if these headlines are to be believed.
I think his speech was submitted first copy to the press late on Sunday night and then a rewrite just before he took the podium
in light of everything
last night, in light of everything that's been going on. So I think, as you say, certainly foreign policy on the hoof a little bit on this.
Because, of course, Liz Truss was going to, I can't remember the term, she was going to upgrade their status as a threat to the UK. I don't know if Rishi Sunak is going to do the same thing, but it does seem like the rhetoric is hardening, and with good reason.
But don't you think it's fair to say this is about 10 years too late?
Well,
We've known for ages that China has an appalling human rights record. We've known for ages that they're totalitarian. The lockdowns have just shown us that in the full naked light of day. We've known for ages that they're the world's biggest polluter.
I think one of the naive assumptions was that with free trade and the opening up of their economy, the government would become more liberal and less authoritarian. And we've seen that that doesn't happen, and that just because we enjoy liberal democracy over here, it doesn't mean that other countries are going to follow suit.
That was proven to be wrong at the Olympics, because the Olympics was going to be the time when the world came to China and China changed the consequence. And, of course, nothing happened in that way at all. The idea that you improve the economy of a country and democracy follows has proved to be completely wrong.
It's almost like taking liberalism to other countries like China or Qatar doesn't work.
No, I would say that if an African country had behaved in the way China does in terms of treating its people the way the Chinese government does, they'd be up before the International Criminal Court.
Interesting. Look, let's talk about social media, shall we? An equally big threat, many people would say, in terms of particularly young people, mental health, terrible, tragic cases. We've interviewed countless people on this programme, parents who've lost their children through grooming or whatever else it might be, self-harm, and a real effort from the government now to try and get this bill that's been talked about for half a decade, Emily, to try and get it through finally. What's the latest tweaks and amendments?
I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried to read drafts of the online safety bill. I've had the pleasure.
They're a great cure for insomnia.
It is very, very complicated, sometimes contradictory. It has been, the various drafts, and very difficult to administer, I would argue. The Telegraph is leading with their campaign, really, which was to make it more difficult for children underage to access social media. They want to essentially force companies to enforce age limits on certain apps, and with the threat of massive fines. So it says in the article here that for Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, fines could be up to £10 billion if they don't show how they're combating children from using their platforms when they're underage. Now, this is very difficult. So that's 10% of their global turnover. This is very, very difficult to administer. I don't know what they would do, have very stringent age verification checks.
Well, it'd be next to impossible, wouldn't it? I mean, every child would lie about their age. They'd use a virtual proxy network. I mean, every kid is...
This is silly.
I don't know
They're
if I
smarter
accept that
than ministers,
argument.
children.
Probably, but equally, you've got to try and put some barriers in there. Otherwise, you're just washing your hands of responsibility for children. They're talking about this third-party verification... credit cards, whatever it might be, and I know that there are workarounds for young people, but some barriers have got to be put in place, surely.
I agree in a way, but... You know, Ofcom research suggests that a third of children aged 5 to 7 and 60% of 8 to 11-year-olds have their own social media profile. The genie's out of the bottle.
And the parents...
What about parents
should
in all
be
of
monitoring.
This? I mean, we're talking about going after big tech and huge fines for them. Do we want to see a world where we're fining parents, going after parents who allow their children to...
No, I don't think we want to fine parents, but the problem is, as Emily says, the genie's out of the bottle, and the reality is it's not possible to control this, the internet, access to the internet, in the way it's possible to control, for example, a young person going into a pub. You can control that by requiring ID. You can't control this in the same way. And you know, we all want to get to the same position, I think, roughly, anyway, most of us do, which is that you stop children being exposed to things they shouldn't be exposed to, but you don't want to clamp down on adults who are able to make their own decisions. That's where I want to get to. But actually achieving that with the internet is becoming, is inherently very difficult. And also it's made more complicated by the fact that the internet's been run by multinational companies who aren't based in the UK.
Well, I think what's really encouraging about all this is the risk assessments have to now be published by the tech firms, and it was leaked, wasn't it, these memos from Facebook that they knew that Instagram was going to have detrimental impacts on particularly young women and their mental health. That's got to be a positive step.
It has got to be a positive step, but the reality is that when people make money from doing something, from following a particular action, they don't want to stop doing that because it affects their profits.
On the flip side, just quickly on that, the risk assessments, this could be a big barrier for small tech companies starting up, having to go through all this regulatory process, having to submit risk assessments and so on. These add costs. It's easy for companies like Facebook, who have huge amounts of money, probably in-house lawyers, all sorts going on, have a direct line to the government to cope with this kind of regulation. But for little startups, it might be very difficult to put them off.
Or the flip side of that, and I've seen this in the world of trying to monitor online pornography and keep young people safe, is that small startups in countries where we don't know even they are can go around the rules that affect the big companies, and you can actually create a whole new set of problems. So we'll continue going through the papers after the break, and we'll speak then to the Culture Secretary, Michelle Donlan. Looking forward to that one.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Welcome back. We are taking a look at the papers with the former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker and the Conservative Home columnist Emily Carver, and continuing to go through the papers. Let's return now to the Eye. This is the talk about these wind farms rebellion for Rishi Sunak, and it's all essentially about this levelling up amendment and changes to this bill that's going through. And last week it was housing causing him a headache, and now it's wind farms.
Well, what's causing him a headache is the fact that the Tory party in Parliament is split between those who are violently opposed to wind farms on land and those who are violently in favour of them, and he's trying to find a compromise. I'm afraid finding a compromise between two extreme positions is not going to end up with a very happy outcome, in my view. Personally, I don't understand why there's such opposition to onshore wind, because this is very green. It helps give us our own energy. We don't have to rely on Russian oil and gas coming into the country. It's very cheap to produce these days. And actually, I don't find, personally, wind turbines unattractive. And I don't understand, actually, why people who say that they ruin the countryside appear to have no views on those ghastly electricity pylons that run right across the countryside now.
But isn't it fair with electricity as well, don't they?
They do, and they're horrible. They look really ugly.
Mm.
But there's a report out saying it costs £1 billion a year when the wind is too high to pay energy companies because they can't store the energy, and of course they have to be switched off when the wind is too low. Aren't wind farms a white elephant? Should we not be looking instead at another controversial Tory amendment to start fracking?
Well, the wind turbines will never offer us a base load when it comes to our energy system. They are intermittent, as you say, and could be quite costly. And, of course, we get the parts, I believe, from China.
Yes.
Is that right?
We don't
That's also green. But I don't think that we should be holding back wind turbines. If there are companies and they want to go ahead in certain areas and there is local support, then why not? But I do think there's a wider problem in our country that things don't seem to get built because there's always opposition.
OK.
And I think some of the Tory MPs...
Right, I'm going to interrupt you both because we are joined now by Secretary of State. So I'll say thank you very much to Emily Carver and Norman Baker for taking us through the papers this morning, and introduce Michelle Donnellan, Secretary of State for Culture and Media, who wants to talk to us about this online safety bill. Good morning to you. We can just about see you in the dark there. Thanks for bearing with us. Look, you're going after the big tech companies. If they fail to protect young people, huge fines for them. Sounds good in principle, but how on earth is this going to work?
So it works via a range of different things. We're describing it as a triple shield when it comes to adults. So when it comes to adults, if illegal content is on social media platforms, they have to take it down. The second part of the shield is they have to actually enact their terms and conditions, which we know they're not doing now. They treat different sections of society differently to others. On a Monday, they might enforce them. On a Tuesday, they don't. And then we're also, as a third element of that shield, saying that they've got to have more control for users over the content they see. But I personally believe the most fundamental and most important part of this bill is what we're doing for children. Now, what we're doing for children is really shielding them from the harms that they may see on social media platforms. And I'm told day in, day out by parents that that's certainly what they want, and from the general public. So in terms of illegal content or also harmful content towards children, that will no longer be allowed on social media platforms. If they evade the law, then they could face fines up to 10% of their global turnover. And that is billions of pounds. That will certainly hit them where it hurts and be a strong deterrent to prevent them from acting in the way that they've done up to now, which has been putting profits before people and before children.
So, Michelle, as an educator myself who's spoken with tens of thousands of British teenagers about safeguarding them against online pornography, I know for my sins that children are so clever at getting around all these obstacles about lying about their age, about using proxy networks. Is this really enforceable? And actually, is the answer is more parental responsibility?
So actually, this was something that I was worried about in terms of the ages of children joining these platforms. We know that all the big platforms set age 13 as the age at which you can then join the platform, but we know that most of them aren't really adhering to that. In fact, often they promote their platform to kids of 10, 9, 8, which is disgraceful. And that's one of the things that I've strengthened within the bill. So I've said when they set these age limits, they've actually got to adhere to them. They've got to explain to parents and everybody else how they're going to do that. They've got to lay that out in their terms of conditions. And if they don't adhere to it, so if they do let 9, 10-year-olds on their platform, equally they will face the same sanctions. So I agree with you. It's fundamentally important that we don't just let them say that they're going to do this, but not actually do it.
The problem, I suppose, with the internet is it's a global concept, isn't it? People can access the internet from all over the world, and the rules are set all over the world, not just here in the UK. Is it possible to have a bill like this and to work in isolation?
In fact, the rest of the world is watching and waiting for us to do this legislation. I've spoken to many ministers and counterparts across the globe who have said that they are interested in using our legislation as the blueprint for their own. And when it comes to these corporations, yes, they're international. The vast majority of them have huge footprints in the UK. They hire a lot of people, but they will have to face the ramifications of British law. They will be subject to these fines if they fail the legislation. And they certainly know this bill is coming. It's been a long time coming. I've had many conversations with them, so have my predecessors. The writing is on the wall now, and what we're doing is bringing it back to Parliament, ensuring it becomes a law, and we're protecting children fundamentally, so that there are no more cases like that very tragic and horrendous case of Molly Russell. And obviously I want to pay tribute to her family, who have campaigned very hard for this piece of legislation, and the other families that have been impacted by the social media's approach to their users, and especially children.
Many such families on this programme as well, and we do share that tribute as well with them.
Yeah, so Michelle, another key point on the front page today is Rishi Sunak talking tough on China. What was it that made Rishi finally get tough on the Chinese who abuse human rights, are the world's biggest polluter, and seem to have scant regard for journalism or lockdowns?
Well, this is something that Rishi has spoken about for a long time. It's something that he spoke about during the campaign in the summer as well. And if you look at the words that he said last night, he was very clear that we can't ignore China. They're a massive global player. But at the same time, do they present a strategic risk? Yes, of course they do. And we need to have our eyes open to that. And we will be updating the integrated review in the spring.
I suppose that's part of his job, isn't it? Juggling all these things, how to engage with a country that you've condemned as a threat. And I suppose you could argue he's dealing with some of those diplomatic difficulties within his own party, not least when it comes to the less controversial issue of wind farms. Look, he's probably minded, isn't he, to get rid of the ban from 2015 with the pressure of 2 previous prime ministers, but that could cause a bit of a headache for him in terms of a backlash.
Look, I agree with the Prime Minister on this. He's always said that when it comes to green energy and it comes to tackling climate change, we've got to take people with us. We've got to take communities with us. That's how we really progress this agenda. Those were his words at COP, and that's the sentiment that he shares now. The government is listening to colleagues around this amendment, and I'm sure that there will be some announcements made by the Levelling Up Secretary in the days to come.
had Michael Gove on the programme last week who was promising he was going to sort of sweet talk to the rebels around some of the housing concerns that they had. But how on earth is Michael Gove going to twist the arms of the likes of Alok Sharma? Of course, he was COP26 president. You've got Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, two previous prime ministers, and Simon Clarke, former chief secretary to the Treasury, who are leading this charge. These aren't insignificant backbenchers. These are really big, heavyweight members of the party.
And let's not forget, this is how legislation works. Members from around the House put down amendments, including senior members of Parliament, and then there are discussions between ministers and those members, and there are tweaks sometimes made to bills. Sometimes people stand their amendment down because they haven't realised the other elements of the legislation. It's all part of the legislative process.
Michelle, we're seeing all sorts of Tory rebellions on wind farms, on housing, on illegal immigration. We're expecting there to be a kickback from the Libertarian side of your party about the online safety bill. Is Rishi Sunak really in control of this country and the Conservative Party?
Well, I just want to correct you there, because we're not expecting a rebellion on the online safety bill, far from it, because what we've done is also rebalance it for freedom of speech and freedom of choice. And this is a bill that is going to protect children fundamentally, which I know that my party passionately cares about. But it is a bill that will also empower individuals, something that we know the polling shows that people want, as well as that safety online. And we're certainly not seeing rebellions across the board on a multitude of issues. What we're seeing is Conservative MPs are passionate about their communities, they're passionate about the areas that they care about, and they're prepared to stand up and ask questions to ministers. Surely that's what we want of responsible members of Parliament.
Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, Michelle Donlan, as Big Ben strikes 7 o'clock. We'll say goodbye to you. Thanks very much indeed for your time this morning. And those of you watching and listening to us, stay with us. We will have more on the new online safety bill in just a moment.
And as we just heard there, the government warns social media companies to protect children or pay the price.
Good morning. It's just gone 7 o'clock. It's Tuesday, the 29th of November. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with me, Isabel Webster and Martin Daubney. These are our top stories.
Social media firms will face major fines if they fail to stop underage children using their platforms. Culture Secretary Michelle Donlan's told us the government is adamant to protecting children as she launches the revamped online safety bill.
The Prime Minister's used his first major foreign policy address to say that China poses a threat to the UK's values, but added that the country's significance in the world cannot be ignored. He also reiterated the government's support for Ukraine, as after meeting with the country's First Lady.
It's been dubbed the Battle of Britain as England and Wales go head-to-head tonight in the World Cup. The Dragons have to beat the Three Lions to have any chance of making it through to the next stage, and good luck to both teams.
And we'll go to the village that's half in England and half in Wales to find out if tensions there are high ahead of tonight's showdown.
So get in touch all the usual ways via Twitter or email gbviews@gbnews.uk and let us know where you're watching or listening to us from so we can give your town a shout-out.
So welcome to the programme. Our top story this hour. The Culture Secretary has warned that social media companies will face multi-million-pound fines unless they stop underage children from accessing their services.
The move forms part of the government's revamped online safety bill, which will be unveiled later today following a series of delays.
Well, the new version of the bill has also dropped controversial plans to restrict content deemed legal but harmful. Culture Secretary Michelle Donlan told us children will be more protected.
Describing it as a triple shield when it comes to adults. So when it comes to adults, if illegal content is on social media platforms, they have to take it down. The second part of the shield is they have to actually enact their terms and conditions, which we know they're not doing now. They treat different sections of society differently to others. On a Monday, they might enforce them, on a Tuesday, they don't. And then we're also, as a third element of that shield, saying that they've got to have more control for users over the content they see. But I personally believe the most fundamental and most important part of this bill is what we're doing for children.
Well, joining us now for more analysis is the Deputy Editor of the newspaper Capex, Alice Denby, and our political correspondent, the legendary Monsieur Tom Harwood. Morning to you both.
Morning.
So, loads to go out there. Why don't we start with China? So, what do we expect is going to happen later on today? Rishi is talking tough. Is it the end of friendly relationships? Are China truly a threat?
Well, some might have seen the end of these relationships coming a little bit earlier on. This was, of course, last night at the Lord Mayor's banquet, Rishi Sunak's first opportunity to have a major foreign policy speech. He's been a very domestic, focused Prime Minister. Of course, all of his briefs previously in Parliament have been focused on the domestic economy. He hasn't had much to say about international affairs. And almost in true Rishi Sunak style, we've seen him walking a bit of a tightrope, sort of in the middle of the road, saying that the golden era is well and truly over, but also saying that we need to be pragmatic in terms of dealing with China. So to some extent, speaking out against human rights abuses, but by the same token, also having economic engagement, which of course is not the line that people like Ian Duncan-Smith, the former Conservative Party leader, a member of IPAC, the International Parliamentary Alliance on China, the more hardline people on China, they're a bit upset with Rishi Sunak for not going further, for not saying we need to have less economic engagement with this power. But ultimately, Rishi Sunak sort of walking halfway between these two positions.
And I suppose that increasingly seems to be his position. And I was trying to make that point to the Culture Secretary there, that he is between a rock and a hard place on so many issues at the moment that actually perhaps his technocratic experience is quite beneficial in his role as Prime Minister, that he can be quite pragmatic, that he can try to find a common ground through so many of these difficult issues, whether it be China, whether it be wind farms, whether it be housing, because there are problems left, right and centre for him at the moment. I suppose that could be his criticism, but it could also be his superpower.
It certainly could, and we're also seeing that with the online safety bill today. On the one hand, they're taking away the legal but harmful, controversial clauses within it, but on the other hand, they're strengthening it in other areas, putting big obligations on social media companies and keeping a rather vague definition of what is illegal content. Content that may well be presumed to be illegal is the phrase in the bill. So that could cover more than just strictly illegal content. So there's a lot of, I suppose, standing in the middle of the road here. And that could be a wise political tactic. But on the other hand, it opens him up to the criticism that we've seen from the Labour Party for the last few weeks now, that he is a weak Prime Minister that is being pushed around by different elements in his party. I think this week we're going to see Rishi Sunak try and counter that sort of stereotype, that caricature, with trying to talk tough in certain areas.
So, Alice, just going to bring you in now. So, when we spoke to Michelle Dolan there, she was adamant there'd be no more rebellions. She would say that, wouldn't she, about the online safety bill today. What do you make of this bill? On the one hand, you could say it's a good move, protecting children. On the other, it's more nanny state conservatism. What's your take on it?
I think it was interesting in your interview that she was very keen to suggest the child protection elements of the bill and much less interested in talking about the more controversial aspects, which are these things around free speech. Things that we've seen, like policemen talking to people about offensive posts they've put online. These are the kind of problems that the bill has had in its passage through Parliament. The things about child protection actually haven't been particularly controversial. There's a lot of consensus around this. And you could even say that in itself is a worry, that we're making laws on the basis of the very tragic but unusual suicide of a teenage girl. That's not a good basis on which to make a sensible law. But nonetheless, the government clearly feels that is the more popular and palatable aspect of this bill.
Yeah, so as you alluded to there were concerns sort of that this was going to be some form of threat to free speech. And I suppose there will be some people who will see this change, this new guise, as a bit of a watering down in that regard.
Yeah, so it seems, from my understanding is that they've changed from having platforms being responsible for removing content that is deemed legal but harmful to having filters where people can choose what they see. So the content stays there, but adults have more of a choice over what they see. That doesn't remove the problem of what does legal but harmful actually mean. This is a very kind of confusing definition. If it's legal to say, then surely it should be legal to type online.
I think it's important to note as well in this that there are new offences created that are ambiguous.
Yeah.
There's an offence within it called that content should be illegal that is likely to cause serious distress to someone.
And who decides
Now,
that?
how do you measure that? Someone might be distressed by the most banal sort of comment or tweet or whatever it is. And so there is a lot of ambiguity still in this bill, and I think to some extent the legal but harmful thing is what the media sort of latched onto because it's really easy to understand. Well, this is legal, so why should it be banned from the internet? But there are other bits that this bill makes illegal that might well surprise some people in terms of the banality of that content.
And there's a question too about who enforces this. I mean, we've got, you know, we know that the police struggle to arrest people for burglary or to prosecute rape cases. Do we really want them to be spending their time looking at people's tweets?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge argument to say we should be policing the streets, not the tweets. I think using child protection is laudable, yet is it an inroad for more intrusion into free speech and more criminalisation just of controversial opinions?
Well, let us know your thoughts on all of these topics. We say thank you to Alice and to Tom for their analysis. And, do keep those thoughts coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, it all comes down to the wire today as England take on Wales for their first ever time at the World Cup. Come on.
Who are you supporting? I can't decide.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Okay.
both.
Well, look, England simply need to avoid defeat in their final group game to qualify for the next round. But Wales, well, they need to secure a 4-goal margin over their domestic rivals and to rely on Iran and the USA drawing. So, a bit of a steep ask, really.
As we see here, it's do or die.
Great headline.
And here's what some fans had to say ahead of the crunch game today.
Yeah, it's really important. We need a win. 100% we need a win. And unfortunately, we've got to do you over. But yeah, the start is a bit disheartening. But it is what it is.
I don't think so, no. I think there'll be a bit of squad rotation and there'll be a big performance to silence the critics of Gareth Southgate, I reckon.
Yeah. I mean, but how much are you looking forward to it? Because even if there was nothing riding on it, it'd still be a big game anyway.
Oh, massive game, massive game. Yeah. When are we going to see this again? It's been 64 years for us. And to play England in the World Cup, a home nation, is a big thing anyway.
Yeah.
So I think we just enjoy the moment anyway.
How long have you guys been friends?
Well, we work together. We've been friends for quite a bit.
Yeah. Before the draw was made, were you working together? So instantly you said, right, okay. Are you still going to be able to work together after this?
It depends on the result.
See,
I'm thinking about your bragging right.
I know. There's sourness on that side. No matter what happens, 100%. No animosity. Good game, hopefully. And may the underdogs win, really.
Oh, gotta love an underdog. It is the way us British are programmed. Look, let's get more on all of this and the other big stories from the World Cup with our wonderful sports broadcaster, Paul Coit. Good morning to you. Lovely to see you.
Are you excited?
I am
Are you feeling that you got the fever? Yeah, you got the World Cup fever now.
It. Look, I've got a Welsh husband, so we've divided loyalties in our house. I've got an English co-presenter this morning who's supporting Wales, guys.
Hold on, what the hell? What's going on?
I want both teams to do well.
Don't try and dial back what you said an hour ago.
I would rather England and Wales go through as
Martin
opposed
Daubney
to
on the fence. This is the new show that we're going to be doing, is it?
I'm surprising people all the time by being more new to my take. But back in the real world,
yes,
it's quite likely that Wales aren't going to make the grade, isn't it?
It is in the real world, but there have been upsets. The World Cup, there's some strange things that have gone on in the World Cup. For example, Saudi Arabia lost to Argentina in that first game. Belgium lost to Morocco. There was the Germany-Japan game. Anything is possible. Yes, it's unlikely. So this is how things work. So if England win, England will qualify, Wales are out. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. OK,
now,
so go on.
Sorry, Izzy, could take some time, because if Wales win, we need Iran and USA to draw in the other game, which is going on at exactly the same time. That means Wales and England would go through.
How likely is that, a draw?
Possible, completely possible, very possible. And the other thing is that Wales would need to beat England by at least 4 goals, which means they would progress, and it doesn't matter what goes on in the other game. So it's all up in the air. So it's a tricky thing where you're playing in a game. I was talking to Robert Earnshaw, as an ex-Wales striker, just earlier this morning, and I was saying, well, what happens? Are you aware of what's going on in the other game? And always, although every player, every manager will say, you just got to do what you've got to do and beat what's in front of you, they'll be aware of what's going on.
Now, Friday night, there was a huge national groan when England played through that terrible ball draw. Can we finally see a bit of creativity from Southgate today, or once again will spreadsheet Gareth go for the easy point?
The name is Phil Foden. This is the name. But the thing is, and I'm going to defend Gareth slightly on this one, and trust me, I like free-flowing football. I love it open. I want us to go for the kill. I want to see really exciting stuff.
Doesn't happen often in big tournaments, though, does it?
Well,
have you
at this stage, but you're right. But at this stage, it's very careful because Gareth Southgate was very happy with the draw because he's thinking, let's get out of the group. Then when we get to the knockout stage, there's no choice. You've got to go for it. You have to win these games.
But it always ends in penalties, all these big games, big tournaments. I don't know.
But that is incredibly exciting. You know, when it comes to penalties, and earlier on, years ago, we don't have the greatest record in penalties, but it's got better.
Okay.
Although, of course, we lost the Euros on penalties to Italy, but we have won penalty shootouts, and we won in the last World Cup, we won one. So they are extremely exciting, and people will say, oh, it's a lottery. It's not a lottery. It's a test of nerve. It's a test of skill. It's everything. But we won't see that yet. But at the moment, we've just got to get out of this group. Wales, though, desperately need to win. So when you talk about Gareth Southgate, whether he's going to go for it, I don't know. I'm not so sure. You know, a draw is going to be good enough for England, but Wales are absolutely going to have to go for it.
All right, stand by with us. We want to bring in a super fan from Wales. We say good morning to Geth Davies, who joins us from Cardiff, or should I say Bore da. How excited are you about this evening?
Yeah, really excited, Can't wait for it to kick off now. It's not been a great World Cup for us so far, so we're hoping for one big performance now, bring England on.
And it's not impossible, is it? Bit of David and Goliath.
No, exactly. No, like you said earlier, there's been some funny results so far, and we haven't put the performance on that we wanted to. So I think there's one big performance in us. There's one big performance in us, and who knows what might happen.
Well, I've got to say, Captain, I've been getting a bit of stick this morning because I've been willing on the Welsh. I think it'd be great to see Wales and England go through. But, I mean, do you think that's actually realistic? I mean, if you're playing against the England that turned up on Friday against USA, you've got a good sniff, right?
Look, England have got the better squad. There's no doubt about that. In terms of footballing players, in terms of the players they've got available to them, they've got the better squad. But, Wales are underdogs. We like being underdogs. We're coming up against our old enemy. So I think we'll just be really excited. And like I said, I think we've got one big performance in us. If we sneak a 1-0 and the other game's a draw, then, we're into the last 16. Or it could be a 4-0 to Wales. Who knows?
Oh, gosh, who knows? A lot of pressure on poor old Gareth Bale. And he's not a spring chicken anymore, is he? Let's face it.
No, and perhaps controversially, I'd maybe get as much energy on the pitch as we can to begin with, and I'd maybe leave Bale on the bench to start with. Give him the last 20 minutes when we need, a third or a fourth or something like that. But I think he's not had the greatest of World Cups so far. He hasn't shown the energy that he's normally had. So maybe start him on the bench tonight. Get some energy on the pitch to begin with, and give him the last 20 minutes to show the world what he can do.
Well, Geth, I've got to say, I was reaching my hand across the border, shaking the Welsh hands today, and then you just called us the old enemy. I think I've changed my mind, mate. I think I've changed my mind live on air. No, we're going to do you tonight, Captain. We're going to do you.
Oh, unbelievable.
Friendly old enemy.
Backtracking rapidly.
I do have to ask you about that, though, and I ask you this as the wife of a Welshman, and he talks a lot about the arrogance of the English, particularly when it comes to rugby as well. But, the fact that we are, facing off against each other in the World Cup for the first time, I mean, how do you feel genuinely about playing England? Do you feel conflicted, or do you actually have a little bit of, not loathing, but, resentment in there?
No, there's no loathing. In terms of the English football team, I'm a massive football fan, so I watch these Premier League players week in, week out, and, I support Liverpool as a fan as well. Even though I'm in Cardiff, I support Cardiff City, but I'm a Liverpool fan. So I wouldn't call it hatred from me. There's a lot of hatred sometimes between the two countries, but personally, it's not a hatred. It's just a rivalry, and we'll be fine. I'll talk to my mates from the other side of the pond, after the game, and we'll have a good chat about how the game went.
The spirit.
You know what? There's one thing I'm a little worried about as far as Wales are concerned, and are you seeing the passion there? You know, the excitement. This is what we were expecting: is that Wales are going to absolutely go hell for leather. You know, we've already heard the Michael Sheen speech there. We've had celebrity chefs going in there. I think everything apart from Tom Jones singing "Sex Bomb" to the Welsh side. You know, are you disappointed with how they've actually played in the last 2 games, though?
Yeah, like I said at the start, it has been a little, we've waited so long to get to a World Cup, 64 years since we've been at the World Cup. So it has been a little bit disappointing in terms of performance. We've maybe had one good half against the USA in that second half. The first half was lackluster. The Iran game was, awful as a Welsh fan to watch. We know we're a better team than that. We know we're a better squad than that. And I'm sure Rob Page will be driving that into the boys today, and they'll be really excited about, a big game coming up. And hopefully, whatever happens in terms of results or whether we go through or go out, I just really hope that we can put one big performance in that makes the country proud.
That's the answer. It's go for it. That's the answer. That's all you want to see.
Yeah, we just want some good football, good quality football.
And excitement.
From both sides. Make it a good game. Geth Davies, we wish you the best of luck tonight. Thanks for joining us bright and early this morning. And Paul Coyte, thank you to you as ever.
And what a fine Welsh name, Geth.
I know, yeah.
But the enthusiasm, it's contagious. I do hope they do all right.
Make your mind up.
No, I'm just going to flip-flop all morning.
I'm with you. I'd love to see them go through, but at the expense of England losing, it's a tricky thing to try and...
People screaming no in my ear, all saying, keep quiet.
I'm supporting my country all the way. Right, the time is at 19 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines this hour.
And the government is reviewing plans to fast-track the removal of asylum seekers from designated safe countries. The Times reports that Home Secretary Suella Braverman is looking to resurrect a Labour policy which would mean most asylum claims from white list countries would be rejected.
The Met Police has launched a new anonymous hotline for people to report corrupt or abusive officers. It follows a series of scandals, including the rape and murder of Sarah Everard by a serving officer. The force has come under heavy criticism over failures in both its anti-corruption and disciplinary procedures, which have left hundreds of corrupt officers still in post.
Climate change and urbanisation could put hundreds of thousands more homes at high risk of flooding in the coming decades. A report by the National Infrastructure Commission is warning 600,000 more homes in England could be at risk over the next 30 years. It's calling for £12 billion of extra investment in drainage systems and stricter controls on property development.
Now, after the break, we'll be discussing a really novel idea, actually. If the cost of driving increases, we'll be finding out about the rise in people renting out their own cars. So I guess it's a bit like Airbnb, but for your car. Would you be up for that? I think it's a really interesting idea. I'm not sure I would.
I'm not sure I want people in the car with me.
But, if it makes you some cash during a cost of living crisis,
good idea.
Why not?
Yeah.
Let us know your thoughts. We'll be back with that after this short break.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. The time is 7:24. Still to come on the programme this morning.
With rising taxes and the dream of buying a home becoming more and more unattainable, are young people going to leave the country en masse? We'll find out at 10 to 8.
Really big issue, I think, that. At 20 past 8, we will ask the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, about their plans to help get the over 50s back into the workplace.
Another Labour policy that sounds very conservative. Well, you can tell us what you think about that. You can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk.
I'm just going to read a couple of those out as well. Lots of you getting in touch about our interview with the Culture Secretary earlier. Les saying, simple answer, ban all children from all social media until they're 18. Couldn't agree more with you. I'll do everything I can to stop mine going anywhere near it. Robert says, who will pocket the £1 million fines? All money should go straight to children's charities.
That's a good idea.
Disagree with that.
Good idea. And on wind turbines, Jeff cut straight to the chase. Bird-killing machines. I think that sort of but makes his position pretty clear. And Rob says the parts emanate for wind turbines from China, as do most solar panels. Do people realise the vast, seemingly everlasting excavations for all of that cabling? Wind power is totally unreliable. It's huge and costly. White elephant speaking his mind there.
Creates about 20% of our energy in this country. Let us know your thoughts this morning. Keep them coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
In a time where money is tighter than ever, schemes to make extra cash are on the rise.
Yeah, some savvy car owners have turned to rental apps such as Turo, Hire Car and CarShare, with a K, to earn as much as an extra £400 a month.
But just how easy is it to rent out your car? From finding the right app to insurance deals, Andy Hibbert, CEO and founder of CarShare, tells us how the process can work. Good morning to you, Andy. So talk us through, if I've got a car sat outside my house, I want a few extra bob, how do I do it?
Very simply, hopefully you'd go to CarShare, download the CarShare app. What we do is we put a piece of technology in your car, a little black box. That enables your car then to be rented by renters without you being there using the key. So we use keyless technology to enable your car to be shared effortlessly to other people nearby.
Sorry, I don't understand that. You're going to have to rewind. We've been very simple this morning. Sorry, how do you get access to people's cars without the keys?
So we put a little black box in your car.
Right.
We use your spare key to enable that box to be a receptor. Okay. So that's in your car. We then put a digital key on the renter's phone, so when they come next to your car, Bluetooth connects this phone.
It triggers the fob, opens it from inside.
Wow, OK, that sounds really clever, but it also sounds like a dream for the gazillions of car thieves that seem to patrol around my neighbourhood. I live in a terrace, and 3 out of the 4 houses on my terrace have all had their cars nicked, some of them repeatedly. It's a really big problem in London. Could this be a problem from that perspective?
Not at all. So the box in the car is disabled completely. So we put a digital key on that car during the rental, which is fully encrypted. And the only way to get that encryption to match is through this key here. So when the car is close to the phone, they connect through Bluetooth, they do a little handshake, they enable themselves to be accessed. Furthermore, when the car, before it's opened, we use facial recognition. Ooh. So the renters have to look into the phone, confirm they are the renter renting the car. It gets the picture, it confirms who they are, and then you can open the car.
So who's your typical punter? Because I mean, I've got a diesel car, and I'm unlucky enough to live in the new expanded ULEZ. So my car sits there. I use it about 7 times a year now. But who's your typical punter?
We've got a variety of customers who share their car. So young professionals who have a car, then realise they're not using it very much. I mean, bearing in mind most cars are only ever used 4% of the time. That's a lot of people to see that.
4%?
4% of the time. Most cars sit there simply gathering dust on our streets and driveways. So young professionals, we have younger families, babies in the back of the car tend to sort of make the car a little bit dirty, so they don't care about their car as much as you think they do. It's just an object that gets them from A to B, so they're happy to share to make extra money. Similarly, older families, teenagers, bigger cars, again, they sit there most of the time, do very little. They're also happy to share. So a whole collection of owners sharing their cars in cities around the UK.
And how does this work price-wise? Because presumably if if your neighbour's got a big fat Range Rover and you fancy whizzing out to your parents in that at the weekend, you're going to pay more than a clapped out or banger down the road.
Well, the owners have complete control over everything, so they can set the price of the car, they can set how often the car is available.
Like Airbnb?
Just like Airbnb. They can set the duration, so some people prefer longer durations and set the minimum time you can use the car for 2 days or more. So you set the price. So I guess an average standard kind of hatchback would be about £40 a day. A Range Rover maybe up to 80 or even £100 a day. But again, it's up to the owners to set the price.
Now, what about when things go wrong? Because back to Airbnb, somebody flooded my bathroom. I had a nightmare trying to get a penny back. If somebody wraps my car around the lamppost, what happens?
Well, firstly, we want to prevent that as much as we can. So we use something called telematics in the driver. So it's like a Fitbit for drivers. We track how they drive, how fast they're going, accelerating, even when they're texting on their phone, and we give them pointers as to how to drive more safely. So that's prevention. If, however, the accident does happen, because it can happen, we've got a fully comprehensive insurance which covers the car, covers the renter, and covers all third-party liability. So that's on every single rental. We have a great partner in QBE who provide that insurance for us.
So you're saying you're telling people in real time to slow down, stop being so aggressive? That's a bit intrusive.
Well, it's not real time. We tell them after their journey, and I think it's helpful because, you might not know this, but if you're texting on your phone and you're caught with a camera or a policeman, it's an instant 6 points on your licence.
I would never do that.
So we're helping people to avoid problems before they become bigger problems. So we're trying to encourage them to drive safely. Be aware of the speeds, be aware of the acceleration, be aware that you shouldn't really be using your phone. Stick it in a glove box while you're driving.
I feel like I'm on Dragon's Den and I've just heard the most incredible business idea of my life. Unfortunately, I don't have any money to invest in it, but clearly you've already gone through this process from a business point of view, and there are obviously a few of these businesses out there. Yours is CarShare, but as we mentioned, Turo and HireCar. Tell us about how that's gone with investors, and people have really been supportive of this idea.
Hugely supportive. I think everyone understands that today's society can't continue to consume as we have been in the past. So, producing cars that sit idle for 96% of their life seems an awful waste of resources. So that's the first thing. Others prefer now to move to, I'd rather access things and not have to own things. So the hassle of ownership, it's high cost. All the insurance, the servicing goes with it.
Trying to find a parking space in London.
Yeah. Well, indeed. So, more people moving into cities, more flats going up. There's little space to park cars as it is. And congestion is really driven by many people who can't find spaces to park cars. So if we can help to reduce cars, that's a big benefit for society.
Well, I've got to say, Andy Hibbert from CarShare, great idea. And also, isn't it great to hear something that's pro-car? It's almost like everything we see now is anti-car, the war on the motorist, so you're encouraging more car usage in a responsible way. I think it's a great idea.
Well, there we go. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's Andy Hibbert, CEO and founder of CarShare. Have you ever used this at home? I'd love to know what your experience has been. I've been a user and a host on Airbnb, and I'm a big believer that that's revolutionary. It's been fascinating, but really fascinating when it comes to cars. I have to say I'm one of those that falls into the bracket of not really caring about my car. Like Andy was describing, I've got footprints all over the back from kids and car seats kicking it. It's kind of just a functional vehicle.
I did a love home swap once with a Paris couple who came to my house. And we swapped houses and cars. It was really good. I had their car for a week and it saved me the hassle of hiring it.
I can see in the future when they're building new, big blocks of flats or whatever, that a bunch of cars would come with the building and then end up sort of, you could just book a car for a day here rather than lots of people having individual cars. I definitely see the world of car ownership is definitely bound to change in light of all of
That's his next business plan you just gave him.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
a little freebie for you there. Keep your thoughts coming in. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to take a break. After that, we've got the very lovely Norman Baker and equally fabulous Emily Carver to take us through your Tuesday papers.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess I've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing. You remind me of me in the European Parliament.
But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own news from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
It's 7:36. Welcome back. Let's take you through the newspaper front pages this morning. Here's the Telegraph. They're leading on the online safety bill, with the Culture Secretary's warning to social media companies to crack down on underage children using their services or facing multi-million-pound fines.
And there's only one game in town for The Sun, which leads on with the words "do or die," covering that upcoming football match for the World Cup tonight between England and Wales. 7 o'clock kickoff.
The Eye covering the growing Tory rebellion over onshore wind, a challenge to Rishi Sunak's authority as they see it.
And a story we're about to hear more on. The Express says the NHS is paying out millions to send Brits abroad to receive routine treatments as waiting times soar in the United Kingdom.
And lastly, the Mail criticises Sir Keir Starmer's plans to cut the charitable status of private schools. We'll ask Labour's Jonathan Reynolds what the reasoning is behind all of that at 8:20.
And again, to my favourite part of the show, where it usually kicks off, is going inside the papers. And here to look today is former Liberal Democrats Minister Norman Baker, good morning, and Conservative Home columnist Emily Carver. Now, Emily, that story we just heard about there on the front of the Express seems extraordinary, isn't it, that we're sending Brits abroad for routine operations? Tell us more.
Yes, apparently NHS figures reveal a total 5,330 patients have travelled to clinics across Europe since 2020. That's cost British taxpayers £4.5 million in less than 3 years. Now, the Daily Express helpfully has a spread here saying why are NHS patients being treated abroad. Apparently, Health Chief set up an overseas commissioning scheme in 2002, and this was to help NHS trusts that were struggling with waiting lists. We know that waiting lists have only got worse, so I imagine this will be growing in terms of the amount of people who we send abroad to have various treatments. Apparently, most of these treatments that people are seeking operations abroad are for things like knee and hip procedures, gynecology, endometriosis, all sorts people are getting abroad. Now, I must, for a little bit of balance, say that the spokesman for the NHS did say that these figures will likely include patients who happened to be abroad while they were treated, rather than those who were sent for planned treatment. But I don't know if that's a bit of spin from the NHS, or if most of these patients were indeed sent because we don't have the facilities in this country. But either way, it does show that the NHS is struggling massively.
Is this a good story or a bad? I mean, is it easing pressure on the NHS in this country? Is this actually good practice, or what do you think, Norman?
I think it's interesting that this has come out now, and when the pressure's on the NHS and people are talking about how difficult it is to deal with the waiting lists. I suppose there are cases when either people are abroad or there is a very specialist need for something which isn't deliverable here. I know some people have gone to the US, for example, for operations for very, very specialist needs. But you have to ask yourself why it is generally that so many people are being sent abroad, and what's wrong with the NHS that this has to happen in this way. I'm uncomfortable with that story, really.
It's obvious, isn't it, what's wrong with the NHS? I mean, it's on its knees. It's unsustainable in its current format. I don't know why anyone's surprised by that. And we have to come up with new ways of being able to cope with not only ageing population, these huge backlogs as a result of COVID, and decreasing workforce in terms of nurses and doctors.
Well, I think that last point is actually the crucial one, that we have got a shortage of doctors and nurses, and the governments continually talk about training more, but they never seem to get the numbers through the door. And the consequence of that is that there's a lot of waiting lists, not because of people being unable to access doctors, actually, there is a problem with that as well, but because they're unable to access operations in the hospitals, and that's a serious issue.
Would it be great if a politician actually stood up and said, we have an issue with the NHS. We have to reform the NHS. We can't keep on talking about it as some sanctity-ridden church which is beyond criticism. This proves, doesn't it, Emily, that it's creaking at the seams. And is it about sending people abroad because it's cheaper, or is it about capacity? But either way,
it's also specialisation as well. Apparently, we're not so good at doing some of these operations. We don't have enough people who are experts in it. But it's terrible.
Our record is terrible compared to Europe.
It really is.
And we all think the NHS is so blooming fantastic, and that's because it's free at the point of use, which of course is wonderful. But at what price?
But it's so interesting because, of course, we had discussions earlier this week about people going private, whether more people should go private. But then you have people who've paid into the system all their lives, and then they're being encouraged to take out private insurance or whatever. It doesn't seem very fair or equitable. But it is true that the Conservatives, it has been toxic for so long for them to even mention any kind of Bruton Ranch branch reform, root and branch reform of the NHS. But members of the Labour Party have started speaking about the need for reform, so that's very interesting.
It's a fascinating point. I mean, I've had friends who've had to go for a cancer scan privately because the waiting times are so long because of the pandemic.
You wouldn't take the risk of waiting,
no,
would you?
they're scared of this time bomb, and if you've had similar experience, please get in touch. We know it's a huge hot potato, that one. Shall we move on to the next one?
I mean, it segues on quite well onto the next topic, the topic of private schools, and this is the issue of people going private and whether or not that takes a burden off the state in some way. It seems Labour wants to put that burden back on the state and penalise private schools, which a lot of people will see as ideological and ultimately just a bit of class warfare on behalf of the Labour Party.
Yes, they will. Just on that last point on the health service, before we move on fully, if you want to cut the health service or change it, then the Labour Party is the people to do that, because people trust Labour with the health service. And if you want to cut the defence budget, you get the Tories to cut the defence budget because people trust the Tories with the defence budget. It's counterintuitive, but that's how it is. On this story in the Mail, I mean, it says Keir's class war. I mean, I do find it slightly surprising that Keir Starmer has not dropped his policy, to be honest with you, because
Morgan hasn't dropped it. They're positively pushing it.
Well, they are.
PMQs, every interview that's had a cabinet up there with the non-doms. It's their two pet subjects.
It is, and I have to say that this strikes me as a Jeremy Corbyn policy rather than a Keir Starmer policy.
Well, he was going to ban them outright.
Well, yeah, was he actually going to ban them outright? But the Mail story, which is obviously written in a way to be anti the Keir Starmer policy, refers to the fact that around 15%, they say, of mainstream private schools could be forced to close under the plans. And it's certainly true that some of the very small private schools, which are very vulnerable to any change in their income, could be vulnerable to this sort of policy. On the other hand, I suppose they would argue that there's a need to raise money for the Treasury, and they have to look somewhere for the money, and this is a legitimate
according
target.
To the Mail's figures, I mean, Labour are claiming this will raise 1.7 billion, but they reckon it's going to cost taxpayers 400 million in having to educate displaced people within the state sector. And when you talk about the closures of schools, it will specifically be the small single sex, typically a quite low fee cost private schools, which arguably would be people who are right on the border of being middle class and sort of striving to try and give their kids the best, making huge sacrifices themselves. And that will close the doors of those schools, but it will leave the big Eatons and the Cheltenham Ladies College open to lots of foreign students. So you actually end up just squeezing out, once again, the middle classes.
Yeah, well, there is partly an answer to that, potentially. First of all, yes, it's certainly true that if you force schools to close, that will be an extra burden on the state because they'll have to pick up the pieces. It's a bit like the health story you mentioned a moment ago. People going to private healthcare. What you could do is what no one suggested this, I don't think, but here I'll make some policy up on the hoof. You could approach it in a two-tier way, which previous governments have done with, say, the brewing industry. There's a different tax regime for really big breweries from very small breweries.
Let's just further complicate the tax system.
Well, I mean, there's a trade-off always, Emily.
I don't like. But you know, this is the problem with socialism and left-wing ideology, though. This kind of story, it just shows it. You know, you don't bring people up by pulling people down. Absolutely. It's not going to improve the lives of children who are going to rubbish state schools across this country, and we should address those schools and why they're failing before just trying to clamp down on private schools because we don't like that some people are in a better place.
If this is about levelling up, to use that much-used phrase, why not make more places available for gifted children from deprived backgrounds in those private schools and change their life outcomes that way, rather than taking those children who are already in the system and then putting them on an overburdened state sector?
I'll just echo your point. I spent a lot of time in schools, as I said earlier, giving talks to teenagers, and I've seen firsthand those schools could be filled many, many times over with wealthy students from abroad. And it is the aspirational middle classes, a lot of Indian parents who save everything to get their children into a school. It's about social advancement. And just when you thought Keir Starmer was doing really well on things like clamping down on immigration, it's back to the dark ages of Corbynism.
But some people will like this.
Yeah, well, clearly they think they're onto something because they keep pushing it. Let us know your views at home on this. It certainly got us talking this morning at front of the Mail. Emily, let's talk about this in the Mirror. Has a cheating husband ever humiliated his family on national TV in such an excruciating fashion as the self-obsessed Matt Hancock? Now, I've got a view on this. I think this is an example of where the Twitter world and the political classes are completely disconnected with the general public. And if the Conservative Party want to get re-elected at the next general election, they need to welcome him with open arms because he's won over the general population. We should stop rejecting him in such...
So you think the fact he came third was because he won over the public?
I think he's...
Well, I guess people had to vote him in, although some people said it was corrupt in one way or another, although I doubt that. I mean, I watched a little bit of him on I'm a Celebrity, and he was as dull as dishwater. And I don't remember him mentioning the dyslexia that much either, which was apparently the reason why he was there. Anyway, the Mirror is full of photos of him and his girlfriend, Gina... What's her?
Cola Delangelo.
Cola Delangelo.
Well done.
That's a mouthful. Yes, hugging and kissing. She's in very little sexy outfits, and he's smothering her with cuddles and whatnot. Anyway, lots of people have come out in his local constituency, and also Grant Shapps as well, to say that he probably should step down at the next election and that politics is no longer for him. But as you say, is that what the public want?
Exactly, Norman. What do you think? Are they missing a trick? He's won the hearts of the nation over, got through to the final, the much sought after reality crown jewels. Would do well to keep him in.
I think winning the hearts of the nation, slightly overstressing the reaction which he got. I mean, I'd take a rather purist view of this, I have to say, which is that he's elected to be a member of Parliament. Yeah. He's supposed to be doing a job for his constituents, and actually he's not doing it while he's in this jungle. And all the time they're writing to him with their individual problems, which is a major part of an MP's work. He's not answering those letters. There are bills going through Parliament he's not voting on. He's not doing his job properly. He's paid for that.
And Norman, you will well know it's hard enough to get people into politics already, but if the route to popularity is making them eat kangaroos' testicles, it might put even more people off. I also have a view on this, and I think the reappropriation of somebody who committed such sins during lockdown, I think is criminal, but that's just me, but a party pooper there.
I'm vegetarian, so what do I do if I go on this jungle?
They accommodate vegetarians.
Do they? Yeah, what do you have instead of kangaroos' testicles?
Yeah, I don't know quite, but they'd find a way to torture you, don't worry.
Vegan testicles.
Have we got time for some more? We've got to move on. Right, sorry, we've got to move on. It's lovely to go through papers with you. We'll have more from them just after 8:30. But Emily and Norman, thank you both very much indeed.
OK, it is coming up to 7:49. Let's bring up to date all the top stories.
As we've been discussing this morning, the government's announced changes to the online safety bill to tackle what they say is the absurd situation surrounding age limits on social media. The proposals will require tech firms to show how they enforce user age limits and publish risk assessments with potential harms to children.
And a new injunction granted by the High Court could stop Just Stop Oil activists face fresh penalties for demonstrating on the M25. National Highway say it has secured the civil orders to prevent unlawful protests on the country's busiest motorways, and hear to that. Members of the environmental group have caused major traffic disruption in the past few months.
The Queen Consort's hosting a major reception at Buckingham Palace to raise awareness of violence against women and girls. The event is being held as part of the United Nations 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, and it will also be attended by survivors and their families, as well as some other queens. Some of Camilla's Queen's companions, who were announced at the weekend, will appear publicly with her for the first time.
Well, a topic that's really got us talking this morning. With the cost of living crisis coming up, younger people are looking abroad for a better, more cost-effective lifestyle.
Yeah, rising mortgage rates, inflated taxes and stagnant wages are sparking fears of a mass exodus of skilled workers emigrating from the UK in search of higher pay and better work-life balances.
And already nearly 10,000 doctors left the UK medical workforce last year, and previous analysis shows that around half plan to move overseas, according to the GMC. Now, could younger Brits follow suit?
Well, with us this morning to talk to us about the concerns of the younger generations is the Intergenerational Foundation co-founder, Angus Hanson. Good morning to you, Angus. I find this topic really fascinating, not least because my best friend has moved to the other side of the world, having qualified as a doctor here, just simply because she could have a better life over there. This is a huge problem, not least if we're training up medics in Scotland, where it's completely free. They get all of their training for free, and then they qualify and they say, thanks for that, and off they go with their doctor's qualifications and earn elsewhere.
Absolutely, and they're voting with their feet. I think they're saying it's a combination of things, that they're treated so badly here in terms of very high tax rates, very high housing costs, and they're looking at the other side and saying, well, things are more attractive there. Sometimes doctors can double their pay by going to Australia or the US, and it's a lifestyle thing. This is a big deal. Pay and lifestyle. And we're just not offering them what we should be offering.
Yeah, I've had friends, anaesthetists, who've done exactly the same thing and moved to Australia, and they have like double the pay and a much nicer lifestyle. How much of this do you think is because we historically found out that people would come with those skills to Britain, but now we're seeing a complete inversion? How did we get to that place?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're looking at a brain drain. In the past, we've had a brain gain. We've, as it were, been stealing or poaching doctors and medics from other countries. I think we've got to that place because of the way we've treated young people. I mean, it's very much a question of intergenerational fairness. I mean, older people do so well, relatively, out of the system in terms of the universal benefits and in terms of the way that the pensions are
protected, the triple lock, of course, benefiting those millionaire pensioners, about a third of them.
Absolutely, yes. We've got 3 million older people living in millionaire households. I think we've also got the problem that young people are paying such a high rate of tax. It's not just tax, it's also national insurance and then student loan repayments. So it's actually about 42%, maybe 43% that they pay on any extra income that they earn.
So what's the solution to all of this? Is if you're sitting in Downing Street thinking, hang on a minute, oh my goodness, we can't lose all our brightest and our best. This is the foundation, the backbone of future generations of Britain, future prime ministers, whatever it might be. How do you tackle it? Because at the moment, politically, they say we have to protect our pensioners because they vote for us. I'm talking about the Conservatives here.
Absolutely.
But if they go for the youngsters and, as you say, reduce taxes, all the rest of it, we've all been discussing in the wake of the autumn statement that we have this high tax burden because we are in unprecedented times, and it's unfortunate, but we have to kind of see it in a kind of post-war footing, don't we, with the war in Ukraine as well. It's very difficult for young people, but it's a necessary evil.
I think the first thing the government has to do, and indeed the Labour Party, is send a message to young people that they care. Nothing was mentioned about young people in the last budget statement. It's a question of saying this is a country for young people. I mean, they often say no country for young men, or women, actually, and we're making it that sort of country. So it's partly a message, it's partly about specific policies. What we would like to see is a change so that every government policy is assessed in terms of its intergenerational fairness.
Another thing I was a huge fan of was the Crown Estate, because of course, nurses, policemen, doctors would get free accommodation from the Crown to make sure they could live near their place of work, retain their talent. I mean, surely that has merit. It's all about housing. They can't afford to live in Britain because of the pressure on rent, and so they're clearing off.
Well, often it's not just a question of cost of housing, it's a question of where it is. So very long commutes are really off-putting. If you commute for an hour each way, it's 2 hours a day, and we know that long commutes are very bad for relationships and very bad for mental health. And so that people, when they've got a long commute to affordable housing, they're thinking, well, maybe I'll take a very long commute to Australia or America and live right next to, very close to my work and very often in very affordable housing.
Yeah, well, this is the problem, isn't it? Angus Hanson, a really interesting discussion, co-founder of Intergenerational Foundation. Thank you very much for coming in this morning. Let us know your views at home on this. Do you feel as though there is an increasing intergenerational divide? Are we doing enough to keep our brightest and best here in the UK? And can we do more? What more could we do?
It just strikes me as criminal that we're losing the cream of our talent.
And having to import it.
Yeah, it just strikes me as completely wrong. We should be supporting these people, particularly, I think, with free housing. I'm a big fan of that. The Crown Estate had a great idea.
Yeah.
We should see a bit more of that.
OK, let us know your thoughts on all of the topics we're discussing. We'll have more for you on the revised online safety bill. And we'll be going live to Doha for the latest on tonight's big clash between England and Wales. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Bev Turner today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
The government warns social media companies to protect children or pay the price.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 29th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel, Webster and Martin Dordney. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Social media firms will face major fines if they fail to stop underage children using their platforms under the revamped Online Safety Bill. Culture Secretary Michelle Donlands told us companies have a responsibility to children.
To face the ramifications of British law. They will be subject to these fines if they fail the legislation.
The Prime Minister, who used his first major foreign policy address to say that China poses a threat to the UK's values, but added that the country's significance in the world cannot be ignored. He also reiterated the government's support for Ukraine following a meeting with the country's First Lady.
And has been dubbed the Battle of Britain as England and Wales go head-to-head tonight in the World Cup. The Dragons have to beat the Three Lions to have any chance of making it through to the next stage.
And we'll go to a village that's half in England and half in Wales to find out if tensions are high ahead of that clash tonight.
Keep those thoughts coming in. Twitter or email gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So to our top story, the Culture Secretary has warned social media companies that they will face multi-million-pound fines unless they stop underage children accessing their services.
Yeah, the move forms part of the government's revamped online safety bill, which will be unveiled today following a series of delays.
Well, the new version of the bill has also dropped controversial plans to restrict content deemed legal but harmful. Culture Secretary Michelle Donnellan told us children will be more protected.
They're describing it as a triple shield when it comes to adults. So when it comes to adults, if illegal content is on social media platforms, they have to take it down. The second part of the shield is they have to actually enact their terms and conditions, which we know they're not doing now. They treat different sections of society differently to others. On a Monday, they might enforce them. On a Tuesday, they don't. And then we're also, as a third element of that shield, saying that they've got to have more control for users over the content they see. But I personally believe the most fundamental and most important part of this bill is what we're doing for children.
OK, well, let's get some analysis of this from our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, and indeed the rest of the day's politics. Good morning to you, Tom. You've got a few thoughts on this bill, a couple of interesting points to note.
Yes, I think that one of the big sort of touchstone issues of this bill was, of course, that phrase legal but harmful. Very easy for people to understand something that is legal in the offline world being made or being banned and forced to be taken off the online world. A lot of people could see the contradiction there. And so many sort of human rights campaigners, free speech campaigners are very glad that this has been taken out of the bill now. But it's not the only sort of anti-free speech bit of the bill. There's several other clauses within it that, for example, mean that content that is judged to be likely to cause serious distress to someone would be banned under the auspices of this bill. Now, that seems to be quite an arbitrary standard. Many things might cause some people distress. Some people may be more easily distressed than others. And so how do you judge that? That's a big question in the bill.
How do you judge it? How do you police it? How do you enforce all of these changes?
Absolutely. And then the other part is, in terms of what is judged to be illegal, it's not the same standard that you would have offline, where everything is presumed to be legal until proved illegal in a court of law. It's almost the reverse. It's that something that may well be likely to be perceived to be illegal must be taken down, and then it could be challenged and put back up. But the presumption is, if it's even likely to be illegal, then it must be taken down. So again, a bit of a difference in terms of how the online world is treated compared to the offline world.
Yeah, and I do worry about this idea that of the laudable notion of child protection, which we can all agree with, is used as cover for more infringement on how we exchange opinions online. Is this the kind of nanny state conservatism that gets people's shackles up? And as you say, who decides what's offensive? And should they actually be bothering with this at a time when we have rising burglary rates and real crimes aren't getting solved in the real world?
Yeah, it's a compelling argument. However, the government is facing an enormous amount of pressure from groups, from charities, and indeed from public opinion. If you sort of look at any opinion poll, the public are very likely to say, well, more should be done to protect children online. It's very easy to say that. But the trouble is, when you get into the particulars, when you get into the detail of how that's done, one of the parts of this bill, for example, making sure that children don't access illicit content online, how do you do that? Well, they're going to be asking adults to give these companies that host, for example, pornography, their credit card details in order to determine who's an adult and who's a child. Now, you can see a whole range of privacy implications there, handing dodgy companies your personal details.
Or another route is giving mobile phone numbers. I saw this when they were trying to control porn usage, and what we've got there is a huge amount of very sensitive data, children's data, in the hands of companies. Can we trust them with that data?
Certainly, and it's some of these, actually, the big porn companies that have been lobbying for this legislation as well. So there's a lot of difficult stuff here. It's one of the reasons why this bill has been in the works for 4 years and being pulled and apart sort of in various different ways. And we sort of have these stories pop up every couple of months in terms of a new clause in the bill or something taken out and changed yet again. But it looks like we are nearing the end of the road for this legislation now. It'll just be very, very interesting to see how feasible any of this is in the real world.
Yeah, and it was interesting to hear the Culture Secretary paying tribute to Molly Russell's family, who've been absolutely instrumental in trying to bring about some of these changes. And although incidents like that are incredibly rare, we've spoken to more families than I care to recount on this very show who have lost children through various tragedies relating to grooming, self-harm, mental health problems, all propagated through social media and other kinds of online issues. Let's talk about other politics of the day. Rishi Sunak in his white tie last night at the Lord Mayor's banquet, looking very dashing as always. But interesting, hardening his line on China. I mean, he kind of spoke, danced to this tune during his leadership campaign over the summer, but sort of didn't come all guns blazing on his first day in the job. It's taken him a few weeks to take this up.
It certainly has. He's been a Prime Minister more focused on the domestic than on the international. But, of course, the Lord Mayor's Banquet is this annual event, this annual white tie event, where Prime Ministers always look a little bit embarrassed having to dress up in that sort of way.
I think they look lovely.
And obviously they are asked to speak on matters of foreign policy. So it was interesting that, of course, yesterday evening he was speaking at a time when, of course, these protests are going on in China. We heard a little bit more of sort of condemnation of that, but also Rishi Sunak not quite taking the same position that he did in the summer when he said he would be the toughest Prime Minister on China, that he would ban the Confucius Institutes, that he'd sort of do all of these different things in terms of policy. Last night he was talking about sort of being more pragmatic towards China, in some areas condemning, in other areas engaging.
And very quickly, there's one more story. We understand you've got some breaking news for us on. Is there going to be a Tory revolt over onshore wind farms?
Well, this is an amendment that was announced last week. It's been building steam in terms of ending the ban on onshore wind farms. It's got the backing of people like Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, and I can reveal today that it now has the backing of enough Tory MPs to wipe out the Tory majority. So the government will have to think very carefully about how they engage with this amendment, because as things stand, if it's tabled, the government would likely be defeated.
Another embarrassing defeat.
Yeah, and the problem for Rishi Sunak is if he bends on this issue, which he might be minded to, he might then get a backlash from the rebels from the week before who were opposed to changes in rural areas on the issue of housing. So if he says, OK, you can start to build these wind farms in rural areas and have more ease of doing it, then he'll upset another wing. And it just goes to show, doesn't it, how difficult it is to govern today's Tory party?
Quite possibly, and those amendments from Theresa Villiers and others have not gone away. They are still being worked out, and discussions are ongoing between those rebels and Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary. But you can sort of see a path for the government to take on both of these things in a way, because crucially within the wind farm amendment, it's about community consent, much in the same way that Jacob Rees-Mogg was proposing there would be community consent for fracking within the United Kingdom. It's a similar mechanism that these rebels want to deliver for onshore wind as well.
Okay.
Superb. Tom Harwood, thank you very much, and thanks for that breaking news. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Right, let's talk all things football, shall we? Because it all comes down to the wire this evening as England takes on Wales for the first time ever in a World Cup.
Excited about this.
Who are you supporting this hour? Because it was Wales at the 6, England in the 7.
I think a bit of both.
A bit of both.
Let's have a bit of across the borders brotherhood, so I hope Wales can do it. But anyway, England simply needs to avoid defeat in their final group game to qualify for the next round, but Wales must secure a full goal margin of their domestic rivals and rely on Iran and the USA drawing tonight.
Well, joining us now from Doha is our reporter Paul Hawkins to tell us how the atmosphere is building. Good to see you, Paul. This is going to be a David and Goliath moment if ever there was one.
Yeah, it will be, but given the fact it's effectively a British derby, Wales are going to be well up for this. They've met up 103 times since 1879. This is easily the biggest time that they've ever met, certainly never at a World Cup before, so it's going to be fascinating to see the two sides when they go head-to-head, although we're still some way off. It's going to be 10 o'clock this evening, local time, much, much cooler when they kick off. And even though there's no alcohol here in central Doha in the Souk Waqif, the fans are still building. There you are, the Wales fans there, just having a chat. Here's an Australian fan over there. And then if we come, you were talking about other sides of the border. If we go the other side of the giant gold thumb here, over in the corner, you can see England fans over here. Congregating there around the table outside the coffee bean and the tea leaf. Hi lads, you all right? Yeah, they're up for it. It's early doors here at the moment. But listen, we've been talking to an England and Wales fan, their colleagues, and they've come here to Doha. Have a listen to this.
Yeah, it's really important. We need a win. 100% we need a win. And unfortunately, we've got to do you over. But yeah, the start is a bit disheartening. but it is what it is.
I don't think so, no. I think there'll be a bit of squad rotation and there'll be a big performance to silence the critics of Gareth Southgate, I reckon.
Yeah. I mean, but how much are you looking forward to it? Because even if there was nothing riding on it, it'd still be a big game anyway.
Oh, massive game, massive game. Yeah. Like, when are we going to see this again? It's been 64 years for us. And to play England in the World Cup, a home nation, is a big thing anyway.
Yeah.
So I think we just enjoy the moment anyway.
How long have you guys been friends?
Oh, we work together. We've been friends for quite a bit.
Yeah. Before the draw was made, were you working together? So instantly you said, right, okay. Are you still going to be able to work together after this?
Depends on the result.
See,
you're bragging right.
I know. There's sourness on that side. No matter what happens, 100%. No animosity. Good game, hopefully. And may the underdogs win, really.
Yeah, so it's going to be fascinating to see how the two teams get on. As you say, Wales have to win and hope that the Iran-USA game finishes in a draw. England just need to avoid defeat, really, to qualify for the last round. They're favourites to go through, but Wales can still do it, and technically both teams can still qualify. It kicks off at 10 o'clock local time this evening, 7 o'clock UK time.
Good stuff, Paul. Thank you.
And as we can see here, the sun are going on. It's do or die. I like that kind of throwback to the 90s.
Do you?
Yeah, it's a good little show.
Well, look, no animosity, as those Welsh fans were saying, in the interest of balance. We were in Wales last hour in Cardiff. Now we're going to go to the famous Kirby Estate in south-east England, where people are certainly behind the three lions. Hundreds of flags there draped across the estate. And our London reporter, Alice Porter, is there now. So what's the mood there like this morning, Alice?
Good morning to you. Yes, I think I'm in the most patriotic estate in London, possibly the whole of England. This is the famous Kirby Estate, which, for those of you who can watch it, we've got flags across all of the balconies around this estate, about 400 flags ready for when England take on Wales. Now, joining me is very much Mr. Kirby Estate. This is Chris Dowse joining me now. Chris, good morning to you. Thanks for letting me come along.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Now, you are the man responsible for these flags.
I'm one of five. I'm not going to take the credit completely, but I'm one of five. There's myself, Alan, Geraldine, Ian and Rebecca, who all get involved to make sure this happens every single time there's a tournament for England, and we've done it again this time.
And it must be such an amazing community event, because I know when it was the Women's World Cup, you had everyone out on the streets, you had people coming together and watching on a screen. It's that sort of community values that I guess so many people love when it comes to sporting events.
It's quite humbling because you don't see it no more within a community. I mean, people just shut their front doors and they don't know their neighbours. But on here, where we are, because we face each other, we're forced to talk to each other and we just get on. Back in the Women's Euros, yes, we did have a big screen and a bouncy castle and a barbecue going, and the whole estate come to watch. We even had a German lady come and watch the football with us, and obviously it was England versus Germany. We beat them, so we'll take that. But there was no animosity. We just all get involved and have a good time.
Now, I can't help but noticing we've got obviously mostly England flags, but we've got a couple of other flags. And is that just trying to make it as inclusive for everybody on the estate?
Yeah, we've always been like that. We've always said if your team's taking part in the competition, you're more than welcome to put up a flag. I mean, you'll see a Canadian flag, there's a Moroccan flag, there's a Spanish and a Brazilian flag. We're still waiting on the German flag to go up round the corner and the Portuguese flag. So Lisa, hurry up, get your flag out. But you can see on the flag post as well, we've got every nationality resembled around the St George Cross and around the we make sure every team's represented as well.
Now, I bet you're praying for good weather today, and because I know previously you've had an amazing screen out for everyone to watch it. Is that going to be happening today?
The weather at the moment is too unpredictable. I'd love to say yes. I'd love to say we're going to do it again, but hopefully come the final or the semi-final at least, we're going to do something for the semi-final. So if there's any marquee companies out there, if they want to donate a marquee to us, I'm more than willing to take one off their hands.
I love it. I love the idea of everyone coming together on this estate, 400 people all watching it. Well, look, thank you so much for letting us come along. It is beautiful. It looks absolutely fantastic seeing all these flags out ready for kick-off at 7 p.m. tonight.
Doesn't that just warm your cockles? You know, I just love seeing the St George's flag like that, a flag that's been pilloried and demonised. That's the sort of place that will bring out Emily Thornberry in Hyde.
And Alice has worn her red and white. Did you notice? She was matching the flags there. She's doing her patriotic duty there for us. Well, look, no such British solidarity in a border town between England and Wales. A bit more sort of contentious there. They are torn over their allegiance. Our reporter Jack Carson has gone to, do you want to pronounce it?
Llanymynech.
Llanymynech.
Last time England and Wales came up against each other competitively, it was an injury time goal from Daniel Sturridge that gave the Three Lions bragging rights. Now it's match day for the two sides in Qatar, the people watching the game in Clonmel will have a different experience to most. When England play Wales at a major tournament, it's always going to be a tight affair. But in this village, things can get a little bit too close for comfort, when right now I'm in England, but one step puts me in Wales. The border of the two nations zigzags down the main road through the village, and the owner of this pub has Wales right outside his window. He says the World Cup has been a mixed experience.
It's been great. The atmosphere has been fantastic for the English games and for the Welsh games. It's been a little bit different, obviously being a Winter World Cup. We would normally have obviously the doors open, everyone outside and music playing. Plus obviously with the games being at 10 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the moment. Again, unless people are booking time off work, it's become very difficult. But if anything, what it's probably done is it made it a little bit more intimate, where everyone's inside. It's a little bit, we're shutting the doors, getting the heating on and making it nice and warm. And it's really helped to, obviously, with the atmosphere. And like I said, is for the 4 games that we've had so far with the 2 English and the 2 Welsh, it's been fantastic.
Not everyone in this village is as keen to engage with Qatar 2022. The owner of the village shop on the Wales side says the controversy around the tournament has clouded his support for the home teams.
Where it's being held, the lack of women's rights, the slavery allegations, the homophobia, the lack of basic human rights in Qatar, really. So it's been a bit difficult sort of getting behind it, but we'll support the nations. I suppose we support England and Wales here, but, you know.
This is a close-knit community, and a home nations derby won't split this village into harsh rivals. But after their loss to Iran, it's going to be hard for Wales to reach the next stage. Wales have to beat England and hope other results go their way for them to make the knockout stages. Otherwise, the sun could well be setting on their World Cup tournament. This one, though, nobody can predict because it all happens on the pitch. It's England versus Wales tonight, and anything could happen. Jack Carson, GB News.
Good effort there, but I don't think he's going to make the squad.
No.
Stick to the day job.
He did what I thought.
Look, it's 8:18. Let's bring you up to date with this morning's top stories.
And the government is reviewing plans to fast-track the removal of asylum seekers from designated safe countries. The Times reports that Home Secretary Suella Braverman is looking to resurrect a Labour policy, which would mean that most asylum claims from white-list countries would be rejected.
The Met Police has launched a new anonymous hotline for people to report corrupt or abusive officers. It follows a series of scandals, including the rape and murder of Sarah Everard by a serving officer. The force has come under heavy criticism over failures in both its anti-corruption and disciplinary procedures, which have left hundreds of corrupt officers still in post.
Climate change and urbanisation could put hundreds of thousands more homes at high risk of flooding in the coming decades. A report by the National Infrastructure Commission is warning 600,000 more homes in England could be at risk over the next 30 years. It's calling for £12 billion of extra investment in drainage systems and stricter controls on property development.
Got lots of views to bring you, lots coming in, and a whole range of topics. We were talking about the brain drain and the NHS. Richard says, look to Brexit, why there is a shortage of doctors and nurses. 4,000 doctors left to go to the EU. That was a story that was doing the rounds yesterday, I think, wasn't it? Fred says, we seem to have forgotten that under the Tony Blair government, the NHS was divided into purchasers and providers, taking billions of pounds from clinical care. The system needs dismantling. We need to return to an NHS focused on clinical care. 50% of staff across the purchaser-provider divide are not involved in clinical care. Sorry, this is all in relation to the paper review we did, wasn't it?
That's right.
Lots of people going abroad for their treatment.
Yeah. And another one that got us going in the papers, I know you were really getting into this one, the views on private schools, Labour trying to tax them out of existence. Richard says a lot of service families send their children to private schools to give them a stable education as parents are posted around the world. Great point. I also find it appalling that MPs are depriving children of a good, stable education purely for their political gain.
Jason says, we heard all this in the 80s. They never shut when Labour got into power. It's a ridiculous story to wobble normal Tory voters who've had enough of this crazy Tory government. These voters will vote Labour next time. Not trying to follow the logic. But listen, keep your thoughts coming in this morning. We love to reflect them on the programme just as soon as we can. We'll be talking to the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, after the break. We will bring up those topics, specifically front of the Mail this morning about private schools. See you in a sec.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 8:25. Still to come on the programme this morning. In a UK first, thousands of British workers will move to a 4-day working week as part of a nationwide scheme. So at 8:45, we'll be debating if it is time to allow for more flexible hours or if the country's becoming a bit work shy.
I know what I think on this. Anyway, at 9:10, legendary football manager King Harry Redknapp will give us his take on the upcoming clash. You may have noticed is tonight, England versus Wales.
We're just a bit excited about that, aren't we? Keep your thoughts coming in. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
And the Labour Party is set to outline a plan to get older people and the long-term sick back into the workforce.
Yes, the British job market has over 1 million vacancies after many over 50s left their job during the pandemic.
Work and Pension Secretary Jonathan Ashworth joins us now for more. Good morning. This is a policy getting older people back into work. It sounds the sort of thing that the Tories might put forward.
Well, the problem is, you say the Tories would put it forward. I think they're actually failing many older workers and many of those people who are out of work for reasons of long-term ill health. That's going to be costing us over 8 billion extra a year on the benefit bill. But many people, many older workers and many who are out of work for ill health say they would return to work if they were given the right help and support. Yet under the Tories, only 1 in 10 of disabled people or older workers are getting any help. So I want to reform the system. I want to devolve more resources and powers to local areas, whether that's Rotherham or Sutton in Ashfield or Barnsley or Bury or Bolton. I want to give local areas more powers and resources to help older workers get back to work, give them training and support, but also better join up the support with those who are currently out of work for reasons of sickness, make sure those people get proper support as well. Because we know that many people want to work. We shouldn't be writing off the talents of anybody who say they want to work. We should give them help to find quality jobs, and that's what I'm determined to do.
So it sounds like you think that there is a vast proportion of people who are on benefits who shouldn't really be on them. I mean, is Labour now sort of becoming the party of clamping down on benefit scroungers?
Well, what we're saying is, according to surveys, there's 1.7 million people out there who are currently out of work for reasons that, they've left the labour market because they might be older, though they may well be currently claiming some form of health-related benefit, or they may have caring responsibilities. Up to 1.7 million of these people, according to ONS surveys, say they would want to return to work if they were given the right help, the right support, perhaps help with training, perhaps better help with childcare, but they're not getting any help. So we've got to change that. We are putting in place too many barriers to people from returning to work. And I don't think we should be wasting our most precious asset as a country, the extraordinary skills and talents of the British people. So I want to get Britain back to work by putting in place the measures to help people to return to work. Now look, there will be people who can't return to work for reasons of ill health or disability, and they deserve security. But for this group of people, up to 1.7 million, who tell surveys they want to work, we should be helping them return to work.
Well, Jonathan, certainly I think clamping down on benefits culture. In all those seats you mentioned, though, coincidence, you just mentioned a load of red wall seats, which are currently Conservative, mostly that you would like to turn Labour. This will land well, but something else that might not land so well, there's another thing in the news today, and that's this recurring socialist spectre of the 4-day week. What's your take on that?
Well, I heard your headline, but I'm assuming that those firms that are trialling it, they're not doing it because it's compulsory. They've done it because they've sort of come to an agreement with their workers. And look, if firms can come to an agreement with their own workforce and they think this is more productive, then that is up to those firms, isn't it? I mean, it's not for us to interfere in that. I mean, I've got to forgive me. I only heard the headline, but I'm assuming that's what's happening in that respect.
I want to ask you about this obsession with private schools. It's on the front of the Daily Mail today. On the one hand, you have Sir Keir Starmer last week coming out with a policy that sounded almost Nigel Farage-like and appealing to the right wing, and then you're really going ideologically after the middle classes with this. And what is the point of displacing a whole bunch of students who are being funded by their own parents and putting extra burden on the state at a time when the state is already creaking? It's just ideological nonsense, isn't it?
Look, I know from my own background, growing up in North Manchester, the power of education and how it opens doors for so many people. And I want to drive up standards and quality in schools, in Rotherham, in Bolsover, in Mansfield, in Sutton, in Ashfield. I want to drive up quality in the state schools there. But at the moment, taxpayers in Barnsley, in Bolsover, in Mansfield and Thanet are subsidising the private schools to a tune of 1.7 billion people. Hard-working people in Mansfield, their taxes are going to private schools for people who are paying anywhere between £19,000 and £35,000 to send their children to the top schools, and yet getting a £1.7 billion bung from the taxpayer. Look, we've got to make tough choices in life. The economy has been wrecked because of the Conservatives. We know things are tight, and when the public finances are tight, you've got to make tough choices. And we think, given the circumstances, that £1.7 billion, which taxpayers are paying in Mansfield, etc., that should go to the state schools in places like Mansfield and Rotherham, rather than the public schools and the private schools.
Well, again, Jonathan, you are rattling off a list there of what I would appear are target seats. You seem to be parking your tanks on the lawn of the red wall. One thing that's in the papers today we've been talking about again, though, is the exodus of people having to go abroad to get basic procedures on the NHS because the NHS cannot cope in Britain. Now, rather than saying more money for the NHS, which I'm sure you will agree with, is what Labour position is, what about reforming the NHS, root and branch, having the guts to take it on? Would the Labour Party do that if elected?
Oh yeah, we've got to reform the National Health Service. I mean, part of the problem with the National Health Service is that we don't have enough capacity. The demands, if you like, on the health service are greater than the capacity to meet the demands. So you do have to properly fund the NHS, but you've also got to recruit the staff that the NHS needs. But you have got to reform the way in which it works. I mean, I used to lead on health policy for the Labour Party. I've not done it for a year or so now, but I remember when I was doing the health job for the Labour Party. I mean, it might have changed, but when I was doing it only sort of 18 months ago, the NHS is the biggest user of fax machines. Well, certainly in the country, probably in Europe. I mean, can you believe that the NHS still relies on fax machines because the IT systems are just not up to scratch? So there are ways in which we can reform the National Health Service to make it more efficient, to help bring down the 7 million on the waiting list now. That is a huge amount of people waiting for an operation in the NHS. And those people waiting for treatment in the NHS is also impacting on our labour market because some people cannot go to work because they're waiting for treatment on the NHS. So it's in our economic interest to fix this as well.
OK, finally, I have to ask you about the online safety bill. A number of amendments being put forward. They are dropping the legal but harmful restrictions. They were seen by many as a threat to free speech. What's your view?
Well, there is worries that weakening it in that respect will allow and perhaps anti-Semitic content to go unchecked or other foul racist content to go unchecked. So there is concern about the fact that they appear to be weakening that bill, but we certainly do need a form of online safety bill to protect people. We've seen people be driven into the most tragic of circumstances because of content that they've been able to find online. And I'm a parent, I've got 2 girls, an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. I mean, it actually terrifies me to think that they might be able to find horrible material, particularly at stages in their life when they are vulnerable, because we all know adolescence is a vulnerable time for children. So we do need to secure the online world to protect people.
OK, Jonathan Ashworth, Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, thanks for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Well, I'm certainly hearing more and more noises. The Labour Party really are wearing the colours of the Tories. All those seats you rattled off, I know are going to be target seats. And it's interesting how he finally said we should take action about anti-Semitism.
Yes, but apart from this attack on private schools, I think that will work to rally Tory voters to vote Tory again, because this is a really anti-middle-class policy that they've chosen to pursue, and I think it will turn a lot of potential people who are not that happy with how things are going under the Conservatives back to stay strongly ticking for Blue.
Yeah, all those kind of on-your-bike, middle-class people that want to do better. I mean, it seems to me that Labour are, once again, anti-aspirational.
Let us know your thoughts on all of those topics. We're taking a break. After that, Norman Baker and Emily Carver back with your final paper review of the morning.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own news from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Ooh, lots of views coming through this morning on private schools. Callum says, I've got no problem with them. I went to prep myself, but the idea of giving free places to gifted children already happens with scholarships, but it wouldn't be needed if Labour hadn't closed selective schools and made it illegal to open new grammar schools.
And echoing a point you brought up earlier, Isabel, Darryl says, I come from Mansfield, a mining family with very little money. I know the area well. I worked hard to get out and now send my son to private school. My motivation is for him to avoid the hell I went through. I'm not rich, but I've sacrificed much. And it's virtue signalling rubbish to say the Eton narrative, in part, this isn't about Boris, it's about helping the working classes. Great point.
And Justin says Labour should rejoice at all those people who send their children to private schools because it directly subsidises state education. How crazy and iniquitous it is to remove charity status from schools that are already subsidising the state system. They are mad.
Yeah.
Not holding back then. Keep your thoughts coming in throughout the course of the morning. We're going to take a look at your front pages this morning. This is how they're shaping up. The Telegraph leading on that online safety bill that we've been talking about all morning. The Culture Secretary's warning to social media companies that they must crack down on underage children using their services or face enormous fines.
And no surprises that The Sun is leading on the words do or die, covering that upcoming World Cup match between England and Wales. You may have noticed is happening tonight.
Meanwhile, the Eye covering the growing Tory rebellion over onshore wind. We had that breaking news, didn't we, this morning, that rebellion now bigger than the Tory majority. A huge challenge then to Rishi Sunak's authority.
And something else that's got viewers going today. The Express says the NHS is paying out millions to send Brits abroad to receive routine treatment as waiting times are so bad in the UK.
So let's go inside your papers. It's our favourite part of the programme, isn't
Love
it?
it.
We love
Yeah.
it. We've got the former Liberal Democrat Minister, Norman Baker, and Conservative Home columnist and regular presenter on the show. On the channel, I should say, Emily Carver. Welcome back to both of you. Norman, you've chosen this story inside The Guardian, and this is about new laws, or RABS being, the Justice Secretary is being urged to back new laws that would stop the super rich from being able to gag us journalists. Sounds good. What's happening?
It is very good, and these are about SLAPs, the so-called SLAPs, strategic lawsuits against public participation, hence SLAPs. And everybody seems to agree that it's a good idea to do something about it, because we have got an example given here, Roman Abramovich suing the journalist Catherine Belson to stop her book on Putin's people. You might argue that Harry and Meghan were busy suing the Daily Mail and the Mail Group to try and stop them reporting what they were doing. But anyway, I mean, I think people would genuinely agree with the idea that you shouldn't be able to have a preferential treatment in law because of the money you've got. What's not quite clear, everybody seems to be in favour of dealing with it. What's not quite clear is what the remedy is. The Minister of Justice says, Dominic Raab's department, this issue is of the utmost importance and is being given urgent consideration. We intend to introduce legislative proposals as soon as possible. So well done for them for doing that, but not quite clear how you can stop it.
It's also true to say that a lot of the stories, I mean, in my time of being on sports desks and knocking around with sports journalists, the stuff that doesn't get printed is incredible because the super rich are using
the NDAs.
Yeah, the NDAs. They're signing agreements to not put stories out. There's a huge amount of this goes on.
And super injunctions where you're not even allowed to know that an injunction's been taken out. And you know, I'm familiar with one or two which affect the royal family, which we don't even know about officially because of that super injunction's in place.
Tell us all when the mics are
I don't want to be a super injunction myself. But,
yes, exactly.
But I've got to say, The Guardian complaining about free speech when they've been complaining about Elon Musk taking over Twitter all week because he wants more free speech, just not the kind of free speech they like.
Well, to be fair to The Guardian, this is also, there's a letter signed here by editors of the Guardian, the Daily Mail, the Times, the Sun, basically every single newspaper, quite rightly, is defending the right of journalists to do their job.
Yeah, fair play. OK.
Let's talk about Gary Lineker, shall we? This is the Mail having a field day, pointing out how much he's earned whilst criticising the Qatari regime.
Yes, and they've got a big picture of Gary topping up his tan when he was at the Brazil World Cup. Anyway, yes. So, Gary Lineker has been very outspoken about the Qatar World Cup in terms of human rights and being very... They say that he gave a virtue signalling monologue ahead of the tournament's opening match when he was talking about migrant workers, human rights issues and so on. However, it turns out that he was pocketing £400,000 a year from 2009 to 2013 by Al Jazeera, which is owned, of course, by the Qatari state. So he's happy to take their money, but he's not. But then he's called. But he doesn't highlight that exactly when he's talking about how atrocious their human rights record is. So this is the allegation that he's a very hypocritical football pundit.
I've got to be careful what I say here because the last time I had a pop at Lineker, we were forced to issue an on-air apology. Gary, I do love you, really. But I think there is a key point here. We saw the same with Gary Neville, and that is, you know, they're banging on about how much they care about human rights issues before the tournament starts. Then it's straight back to business, taking loads of money, snouts in the trough. I think fans see through it. Norm, I think they're bored of it all now.
I don't think the British public like hypocrisy in any shape or form. They don't want to be lectured by someone who's doing the same thing themselves that they're lecturing about, and that comes down to, for example, you know, King Charles was always banging on about the environment while taking private jets everywhere. That sort of thing goes down really quite badly. The other interesting thing about Qatar, I think, is the comment from Tony Blair today. He's popping up again, saying it's not sensible, his phrase, for Britain to question Qatar's record on human rights. That's an interesting observation because, you know, are we here to defend our way of life or are we not? Is it discourteous, on the other hand, to be so upfront about how the Qataris are behaving towards people they don't like, for example, people who are homosexual or whatever? There's an interesting balance to how you get your point across without being offensive,
And
I think.
I suppose we can all be charged with the hypocrisy line as well if we're not careful. I mean, if we take this view on Qatar, we're going to take this view on Pakistan when we play them in cricket. Where do you draw the line? And equally, when it comes to Al Jazeera, yes, they are funded by the Qatari regime, but they are actually really well respected and impartial, and they aren't afraid to call out human rights behaviours or whatever the phrase is I'm looking for.
I think it's just annoying
place.
because he's on the BBC and he says, I'm not taking any money from Qatar, I'm there to report the football and so on. And then you only have to look back a couple of years and find that he was very happy to take money. But I am a bit tired of the politicisation of this. I mean, the World Cup is in Qatar. That was a decision that was made. Wrongly, in my view, but it was made. And so do we have to hold up Gary Lineker to some extraordinary...
It comes down to double standards, and the same applies to Tony Blair.
Yeah.
Now, he's the first person to criticise the British for being racist, small-minded, won't take your vaccines, whatever it is. And then he's saying we shouldn't criticise Qatar. Of course we should criticise Qatar. Nobody should be above criticism, including Tony Blair and including the Qatar regime.
I think we have to be... I agree with that, but we have to do so in a diplomatic way and not be offensive, and that's unnecessarily gratuitously offensive to people, which is, I think, what he was trying to say here. And as far as Al Jazeera is a great station, actually, in terms of the news reporting. But, whatever news outlet you're looking at, including including GB News, you know, somebody owns it, and inevitably that's going to reflect to some extent the ownership of the channel or the newspaper in question. I mean, look at Rupert Murdoch's hold over the press. I mean, his views come through in his papers, whether you like it or not.
I worked for Sky when he owned Sky, technically, and I can categorically tell you I never had any undue influence from Rupert Murdoch.
No, I think the Sun and the Sun in particular may have a different experience.
Yeah, well, it's all down to the way that
But it's all about balance, isn't it? I mean, you're a former Liberal Democrat, I was Brexit Party, you're Conservative. You and I have very different reports on things like Brexit, and that's the point. If you have balance, then you're OK.
He's so annoying because he's just so terribly right on about absolutely everything and so vocal about absolutely everything. But of course, like most people, he's in it for himself.
Yes. I just want to pick up on the balance point very quickly, because what's great about this country is that because we've got a requirement for television and radio to be balanced, and Ofcom enforces that, you can trust television in this country far more than you can in the States, where Fox News has no pretense of being balanced.
Quite entertaining, though.
Yeah. The downside is we're listening to Gary Lineker lecturers on Brexit and climate change. But hey-ho, life goes on.
We've got to move on from the papers or onto another topic. I'm just being told in my ear. From the papers,
Where's our amusing stories?
We've got a bit too in-depth there. It's been a pleasure. Never a chore with Emily Carver and Norman Baker. Thank you both very much. We'll see you again soon. Right, it's 8:47. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines.
Great. And the government has announced changes to the online safety bill, as we've been talking about all morning here on GB News, to tackle what they say is the observed situation surrounding age limits on social media. More than 1.6 million accounts owned by children are falsely registered with an adult age. The proposals will require tech firms to show how they enforce user age limits and publish risk assessments with potential harms to children.
A new injunction granted by the High Court could see Just Stop Oil activists face fresh penalties for demonstrating on the M25. National Highways says it secured the civil order to prevent unlawful protests on the country's busiest motorway. Members of the environmental group have caused major traffic disruption in the past few months.
And the Queen Consort is hosting a major reception at Buckingham Palace to raise awareness of violence against women and girls. The event, being held as part of the United Nations 16 Days of Activism against gender-based violence, will also be attended by survivors and their families, as well as other queens from around the world.
Now, if you're listening on the radio, fasten your seatbelt. If you're watching us at home, pour yourself a strong coffee, because we're in for a row now, because we want to talk about the working week. Have you ever started your week exhausted? Yes. Well, maybe you feel the weekend just isn't long enough to recharge. Yes. It turns out you're not alone. Over 100 companies have permanently moved to 4-day weeks in a bid to improve work-life balance.
3-day weekends are, they say, the future. However, with just 1 in 3 jobs offering flexible working options, it seems many employers don't agree.
Well, joining us to defend the 4-day week is Jo Ryle, director of the 4-day week campaign. And we're also joined by Alex Proud, who is an entrepreneur and staunch supporter of the 5-day week. Good morning to you both. I'm hoping we've got both guests there. I only saw Alex Proud. Oh, hello. Yeah. Welcome to both of you. Look, may I start, Jo Ryle, with you? We've spoken to the 4-day week campaign before on this programme, and my question is, yes, it might improve work-life balance, but does it improve productivity? Because at the end of the day, we all know how the country is struggling at the moment to boost growth post-pandemic, and many would argue before we've seen the benefits of Brexit yet. Do we really need our workforce to be, taking off their shoes, feet on the desk, chilling out 1 day a week?
Well, numerous studies now, numerous pilot programmes have shown that 4-day working week with no loss of pay for workers is a win-win for both workers and employers. So productivity is going up on the one side, and then so is the well-being of workers, and they're better rested, having a better work-life balance. And we've got to remember on productivity, and it's an acute problem for the UK. We work on the longest hours in the world, the longest in Europe except for Greece, while having one of the least productive economies at the same time. So all these long working hours we're putting in is making workers burn out, stressed, overworked, which of course isn't going to produce good results in the workplace. And so that's why we're seeing this increasing demand for a 4-day working week. It's a lot more popular than it was a few years ago. And the COVID pandemic has given us the opportunity to totally rethink the world of work.
So, Joe, as a grizzled cynic who's been around a long time, that's me, not you, I've seen this story pop up intermittently, and it's the stuff of socialist dreams, isn't it? I mean, you're a former advisor to John McDonnell. This is an anti-capitalist movement. Is it really going to work in the real world?
I don't think it is. I think this is about a work-life balance for everyone, and what's not to like about that? Working hours haven't really reduced in this country for decades. So if you think about all of the productivity gains since the 1980s, we're working smarter, there's more automation, new technology. All of that's making us more productive, but that's not being passed on to workers in terms of more leisure time, more free time. And mainstream economists like John Maynard Keynes have predicted by now we'll be working up to 15 hours a week, and that just hasn't happened. And so this is about, British workers being burnt out, stressed, not having enough time for family, for friends, for the other parts of life, and saying, things need to change. Just because we've been wedded to this model of work for 100 years, a very long time, it doesn't mean it's the right way of working. The world of work has transformed in the last 100 years, but working hours haven't really changed to keep up with it.
Well, look, I want to bring Alex Proud in. He's chomping at the bit here in the studio with us. Look, it's all about work-life balance. Tell that to the people who can't see their GP, someone who wants a builder to do some work on their house, or indeed their children who go to school. They can't all suddenly start working 4 days a week, can they?
No, and I think, frankly, in a country that is in as much trouble as we're in right now, and it's interesting that we mentioned COVID, and COVID isn't that the test bed, we can spend 300 billion and it's not going to screw us up. It did. That we can all work at home, send an email at 8:30, the proverbial jacket on the back of the chair, then go back to sleep for 3 hours and watch the TV and all the soaps. It's nonsense. It's make-believe land. It's interesting that Martin mentions productivity. The UK has been the laggard of productivity in the world for 20, 30 years. The US has consistently, year out, year in, and France, been 20% higher than us in productivity. They currently produce 20% more than we do per person. If we lose a day and a week in the UK, we are literally going to go bankrupt. It's a completely ludicrous proposal in make-believe land. I'm sorry.
It's interesting, Joe, the mention of France interests me because actually they work fewer hours than us. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's correct, and they've got higher productivity as well in the UK.
Alex, I'm throwing this back to you because, looking through the companies that have signed up, you've got 100 companies signed up to your initiative, and good luck to them. A lot of it is kind of working from home, IT stuff, and that's quite easy. But say, how would this work? Remember, this is a left-wing proposition. How would it work for the working classes? 4-day-a-week plasterers? 4-day-a-week white van men? How would that possibly work?
It doesn't work for the vast majority of people. Look, business, capitalism works best when, Martin leaves us alone and we're left alone by the government and we get on with what works best for us. There are many businesses that this may suit. And guess what? They're intelligent enough to work that out for themselves and do it themselves. If I want to employ a salesperson, I haven't got enough money, and I go, there's a person who's had a child and only wants to work a 3-day week. Good for me, but I don't need to be told that I have to do it or that I should do it. And I think that's what capitalism doesn't like, is being told what to do, because most businesses are best at running their own business without government interference and without people like Martin interfering. Sorry,
Alex,
Martin.
do you want to come back?
Joe, yeah, I can come back on that. Look, we've got recruitment crisis in many, many different industries of the economy right now. And if you let's take the NHS as one example, teachers as well. The main reason they're leaving these industries is because they're saying work-life balance. They're completely burnt out, they're completely stressed. It's no way to run an effective economy. I think everyone should be able to agree on that. And there's many sectors where we've seen the 4-day week has come in and been the best option for employers being able to retain staff, attract new talent to organisation. Many of the companies that have moved to a 4-day week have also even seen their profits going up. When workers are working more effectively because they're better rested, they're working smarter, that's a win for everyone. And the 9-to-5 5-day working week is outdated. It's no longer fit for purpose. It's been around for 100 years. The economy's transformed since then, and it's simply time for change.
And do you accept that then? Because we've been talking this morning about the brain drain of youngsters finding working conditions and as Joe was pointing out, their work-life balance being so terrible, a lot of them going overseas, shorter commute times, bigger homes, all of that kind of thing. We've got to try and entice our brightest and best to stay here. If this is one of those tools we can use, perhaps it's...
I think most of the people leaving are badly run institutions like the NHS, which are destroying their staff. If you're a well-run business, working 5 days a week is not a problem, and you want the money that comes with it, you want the promotion that comes with it, and I'm sorry, Any business that's not going to notice all its staff not working one day a week and not notice the massive impact, that's a very badly run business, perhaps like the NHS. I think at the moment the NHS problem is it needs a lot more staff than it has. It's not that it needs less staff working less hours. That's going to be even more of a disaster. Ditto teaching.
OK. Alex Proud, Joe Ryle, we have to leave it there. Thank you both for making your arguments so passionately this morning. Let us know at home where you stand in the debate. I'm not sure where I stand on that, really. I think it's not one size fits all. I can see how it might work in some industries and not in others, but I'm all about trying to get this country back to keeping our brightest and best and increasing productivity. So, as usual, I'll try and find the middle line.
I'm with Alex on this. I'm with Alex. I think it's unicorn politics from the socialist left. I think again, it keeps coming around. I think it should go away. We need to be working harder, not less hours.
All right, keep those thoughts coming in. After the break, we'll be finding out what legendary football manager Harry Redknapp makes of tonight's match between England and Wales.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
The government warns social media companies to protect children or pay the price.
Good morning, it's 9:01 on Tuesday, the 29th of November. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Isabel and Martin. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Social media firms will face major fines if they fail to stop underage children using their platforms under the revamped online safety bill. Culture Secretary Michelle Donlan told us companies have a responsibility to children.
To face the ramifications of British law, they will be subject to these fines if they fail the legislation.
The Prime Minister's used his first major foreign policy address to say that China poses a threat to the UK's values. But he added the country's significance in the world cannot be ignored. He also reiterated the government's support for Ukraine hours after meeting with the country's First Lady.
And it's been dubbed the Battle of Britain as England and Wales go head-to-head tonight in the World Cup. The Dragons have to beat the Three Lions to have any chance of making it through to the next stage. We'll be asking legendary manager King Harry Redknapp about his predictions for the match shortly.
And sticking with the royal theme, the Prince and Princess of Wales are about to jet off to Boston ahead of the Earthshot Prize. We'll be hearing from royal author Katie Nicholl, who says the conflict between brothers William and Harry will mean there'll be no reunion stateside.
I've got to say, I'm very excited about the Harry Redknapp interview.
I know you are.
Total fanboy.
Yeah.
Love our Harry. Anyway, get in touch the usual way via Twitter or email gbviews@gbnews.uk and let us know where you're calling or watching us from so we can give your town a shout out.
So our top story this morning, the Culture Secretary has warned social media companies that they will face multi-million-pound fines unless they stop underage children accessing their services.
The move forms part of the government's revamped online safety bill, which will be unveiled today following a series of delays.
The new version of the bills also dropped controversial plans to restrict content deemed legal but harmful. Well, Culture Secretary Michelle Donlan told us earlier this morning children will be more protected.
Describing it as a triple shield when it comes to adults. So when it comes to adults, if illegal content is on social media platforms, they have to take it down. The second part of the shield is they have to actually enact their terms and conditions, which we know they're not doing now. They treat different sections of society differently to others. On a Monday, they might enforce them, on a Tuesday, they don't. And then we're also, as a third element of that shield, saying that they've got to have more control for users over the content they see. But I personally believe the most fundamental and most important part of this bill is what we're doing for children.
Well, joining us now for more analysis is our political reporter, Olivia Utley. Olivia, no Brexit polls today. I can promise you that for sure. So let's start with this online safety bill. We had Jonathan Ashworth on earlier saying that the Tories are watering down this bill. They're backing down on this crucial thing about comments deemed offensive can be policed.
Well, yeah, it feels as though this legislation has really been through the mill over the last year or so. It's obviously a well-intentioned piece of legislation intended to keep children safe. But free speech campaigners were very alarmed about the idea of this new genre of content deemed legal but harmful, which essentially meant that if some sort of arbiter decided that a piece of content was going to distress people, it would be taken down off social media, which is sort of all very well when you're imagining, you know, ISIS beheadings or something, but who is that arbiter? And imagine if we had a Corbyn government, for example, what would be deemed legal but harmful? So that piece of the legislation has been removed, which some people are saying is a watering down. But free speech campaigners are pretty happy with the change. What they're more alarmed about, though, is that there is a new genre of things which is now going to be deemed illegal. So that's a bit of a worry. It's not quite clear whether the online safety bill in its new form will sort of generate the same sort of anger that it's generated over the past few months, but it doesn't feel as though it's going to be sort of smooth sailing through Parliament, which just means another issue to add to Rishi Sunak's growing list of problems.
Well, let's talk about Rishi Sunak. There he was last night at the Lord Mayor's banquet, donning the white tie and making his first foreign policy speech, really, since becoming Prime Minister. We were expecting it perhaps earlier on in his premiership. He'd signalled during the leadership campaign his strong line on China. He promised to come out all guns blazing on it, actually, on day one in the job. He hasn't done so, but he's making it clear now. Or is it clear? Because on the one hand, he's saying they're a threat to our values, but on the other hand, he's saying, well, we do need to engage.
Yes, exactly. And it seems like a very different Rishi Sunak to the Sunak that we saw over the leadership campaign in the summer, when, as you say, he came out all guns blazing, was wooing all of the China hawks in the Conservative Party, of which there are quite a lot. They're an important caucus and very influential in the backbench of the Conservative Party, led by Ian Duncan Smith, of course, former leader, who holds a lot of sway among MPs. So Rishi Sunak was trying to get his sort of anti-China credentials up. Those anti-China credentials don't seem to be quite so strong now. The speech yesterday, yes, as you say, he sort of made the right noises about how we must stand firm against what's going on in China at the moment. Obviously, we've got these huge protests against lockdown. People are saying the biggest protest in China since Tiananmen Square. But then he sort of gives with one hand and takes away with the other, because in the next breath, he's saying that we can't ignore that China is an important strategic part of the future, and saying that he's going to have a long-term strategy to engage with them, which to a lot of China hawks in the Conservative Party sounds a little bit like we are going back to the golden age, even though he says we're certainly not.
Now, I wonder how much of this tough talking is about his environmental stance. I mean, he gave away 13 billion quid at COP27. China didn't even want to turn up. They're the world's biggest polluter. They have complete disregard for environmental standards. Could that be a part of it? They're seen as a sort of dirty kind of diplomatic partner.
Yeah, I think that Rishi Sunak sort of feels as though, I mean, he makes the point in a roundabout sort of way that Britain can, do all it can to try and combat the energy crisis, but until China acts, then no material difference is really going to be made. So for that reason, we have to engage with China, and to combat increasing Russian aggression, we sort of need to engage with China. So he does have sort of good strategic reasons, as he's laying out his arguments clearly for engaging with the Chinese government. But again, that is very much going to alarm China hawks in the party, who are deeply, deeply worried about the repression of free speech.
Okay, Olivia Utley, thank you very much indeed. Right, the time is 8 minutes past 9. Let's bring you up to date with our top stories this hour. And the government's reviewing plans to fast-track the removal of asylum seekers from designated safe countries. The Times is reporting that Home Secretary Suella Braverman is looking to resurrect a Labour policy which would mean most asylum claims from whitelist countries would be rejected.
And the Metropolitan Police has launched a new anonymous hotline for people reporting corrupt or abusive officers. It follows a series of scandals, including the rape and murder of Sarah Everard by a serving officer. The force has come under heavy criticism over failures in both its anti-corruption and disciplinary procedures, which have left hundreds of corrupt officers still in their positions.
Climate change and urbanisation could put hundreds of thousands of more homes at high risk of flooding in the coming decades. This is according to a report by the National Infrastructure Commission. It's warning 600,000 more homes in England could be at risk over the next 30 years, and is calling for £12 billion of investment in drainage systems and stricter controls on property developments.
The Prince and Princess of Wales will fly to Boston this week as part of their commitment to environmental awareness.
And they will host the Earthshot Prize, with reports that there are no plans for the brothers, William and Harry, to meet.
Well, author and Vanity Fair royal editor Katie Nicholl is here for us now. So there's a bit of sibling rivalry going on here. We spoke to our US correspondents earlier, and they were saying that Team Will is now much more supportive than Team Harry.
Well, I think we know there's this rivalry at the heart of the brothers, but I think this is an interesting dynamic, because you've got the Prince and Princess of Wales going over tomorrow to Boston. Now, they're flying out ahead of the awards ceremony. The big pièce de résistance, what we're being told, is William's Super Bowl moment, is going to be this prize-giving ceremony. On Friday, he's going to be giving 5 winners £1 million each, huge prize money, as part of this initiative, which he hopes is going to very much be his legacy project. Brilliant. Hitting the States. This is the first time they've gone to the States as the Prince and Princess of Wales. It also comes after a difficult period for William and Kate in America. The fallout from that Oprah interview really caused a cultural divide here. So they're dealing with all of that. Plus, a couple of days later, you're going to have the Duke and Duchess of Sussex on the same coast receiving a different kind of award, the Ripple of Hope Award, for taking on institutional racism, we understand, within the royal family. Now, I've spoken to the palace. My understanding is that the absolute focus for William and Kate is going to be on Boston. They're going out early so that they can meet some people, get to know some people in the community, and they don't want any distractions. Well, you can absolutely understand why not, but there is a big distraction, and that's the elephant in the room.
And, you know, you've written about this a lot in the past, and we know and love the Prince of Wales for the fact he can hardly disguise his feelings. He's quite an emotional character, isn't he, the Prince of Wales? And we remember in the immediate aftermath of that Oprah interview, he was heckled by a journalist and asked if the monarchy was racist, and he couldn't help himself, but he bit back, didn't he?
That's right.
There is every chance that could happen again, when they could be upstaged by the unfortunate timing of this Ripple of Hope award. Do you think he'll be able to keep a lid on it if he is pushed to that point again?
I think it's an interesting question, Isabel. I mean, you're referring to the aftermath of the Oprah interview when it was, I think it was a Sky News reporter who asked, is the royal family a racist family? And William, who very rarely responds to these questions that are called out, you're asked not to call out, said absolutely not. Now, in America, it's a different game with the media. There's every chance someone might call out a question, and everyone knows that Harry and Meghan have set themselves up as the alternative royal court. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't asked a question about his brother. But I think they are going to do everything they can to keep that focus on the Earthshot, on their visit, and not let anything detract.
Do you think that the death of Her Majesty the Queen has changed the mood in the States towards the Prince and Princess of Wales? An increase in support for them? He's first in line to the throne now.
I do. I mean, remember, I write for Vanity Fair, so I'm writing very much for this American audience. Now, in the wake of Oprah, I would say the sympathy was for Harry and Meghan, who were seen very much as victims of the institution, and there was a bit of a tide turning against William and Kate. We'd never seen that before. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see the reception. I think this is going to be a massive charm offensive. I suspect that America will fall head over heels in love with William and Kate, the new Prince and Princess of Wales. I think it will be a huge success. And I think when you think about the last tour they did to the Caribbean, which wasn't the given success we expected it to be, and this isn't quite a royal tour, it's still an important visit, I think you're going to see things done quite differently on this. I think it's going to feel fresh and modern, and I think they're going to engage in a way that you haven't seen them do.
I really hope so. I really hope that in this new era, the new Prince and Princess of Wales will put forward that dignified, ambassadorial, more austere view of the royal family, and this kind of showbiz tittle-tattle hopefully will sort of start to vanish away.
I'm literally told the words are, we don't want any distractions, and I think you're right. I think that's what they want the focus on. They're representing the royal family, they're out there as global ambassadors, and particularly for the Prince of Wales, he wants this to be his legacy project. This is really important to him. He doesn't want family tittle-tattle and gossip and a family rift overshadowing any of this.
Meanwhile, lots of other royal news around Queen Camilla hosting a reception at Buckingham Palace alongside lots of other queens.
I know. Well, I'll be going down there later on this afternoon to the palace to see this reception, and we're going to have the Queen of Jordan, the Queen Matilda, the Belgians. So there is a real royal turnout for this, and I think it's incredibly important that the Queen Consort's first reception at Buckingham Palace, her first big speech, is about a really difficult subject that's still considered quite taboo. It's domestic and violence, just general violence against women and young girls. And it's a cause that the Queen Consort has championed for the past 10 years. I think she's making it very clear that even in her new role, she's not going to be afraid to take on difficult issues, stigmas such as these, and use her spotlight to put the subject on something quite tough.
And an interesting one here about Fergie will be invited to spend time with the royal family for the first time. So that's something that we've been getting a little bit excited about. So, and it does show, as you said, that there is a way back if you behave yourself rather than doing what Meghan's doing.
Yes, I think it's interesting. This is a story that Sarah is going to be invited to Sandringham for Christmas. We know the King is going to be hosting the family Christmas. The Sussexes will not be there. But I think the fact that Sarah's been invited is significant because family is clearly very important to the Prince of Wales. He's put his foot down when it comes to Andrew coming back into the royal fold. He's not. There's not going to be any public engagements. But he's going to be allowed at the Christmas table with his ex-wife. And I think that shows the emotional side of the King. You've got that emotional side, the importance of family, but then the importance of duty. You won't see Andrew anywhere near duty, but if his ex-wife's at the dinner table, I think that's a softening and a thawing of relations, because, of course, while the Duke of Edinburgh was still alive, she was persona non grata.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating shift of the monarchy and the way it's all evolving. Always good to see you, Katie Nicholl.
Thank you.
Very much indeed.
OK, well, coming up, this is the highlight of the morning for me. I can't lie. Sorry, Isabel.
It's all right.
We'll ask former football manager and legend King Harry Redknapp who will win the Battle of Britain tonight as England take on Wales in the World Cup.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. Well, it all comes down to the wire today as England take on Wales for the first time ever at the World Cup.
England simply needs to avoid defeat in their final group game to qualify for the next round, but Wales has to secure a 4-goal margin over the domestic rivals and rely on Iran and the USA drawing.
Now, I can't deny I'm very excited about this. Joining us now is the legendary football manager, King Harry Redknapp from Dubai. Now, Harry, my biggest idol is Brian Clough, the greatest football manager England never had. You're up there as well with that. If you were the gaffer tonight, Harry, would you make some significant changes to that ball draw against the USA?
Yeah, I would. I'd make one or two changes. Yeah, you know, everyone's clamouring for Phil Foden. I'm a big Foden fan. I think we've got to get Foden in the team. And I'm also a big Grealish fan. I just think they've got so much ability and they can open the door, and defences are going to be tight tonight. Wales are going to set up and try to hit us on the break. But I do think we need to have a little bit of magic in our team that can open up the Welsh defence, and I would certainly look at them too to get them in the team tonight.
Same question, I suppose, for the Welsh team. Some questions about whether or not Gareth Bale should be on the bench to start. What would you say about that?
No, he has to play. If I was the manager of the Welsh team, he's got to play. He can with one flash of genius, he can change a game. He can suddenly unleash a shot from 30 yards, or he can do something special. They're going to need someone to do something special tonight. I mean, if it's to draw the other game, they only need to win 1-0 to, I think, unless I'm wrong, unless I've got my maths wrong, you may be right, but I think if the other game's a draw and they beat England, which I don't think they will, but if they did beat England, I would think that would probably put them through, because Iran have... they'd have 4 points, Wales, and Iran would be on 4 points if it's a draw. And Iran would have worse goal difference, I'm sure, having shipped 6 against England. So I may be wrong, but I read it as though even a 1-0 win, if the other game's a draw, would do Wales.
Yeah, that is right. If it's any form of victory from the Welsh and a draw with Iran USA, then they'll be through. Now, Harry, you're no stranger to the kind of up and down nature of football management. 6-2, Southgate was the best thing since sliced bread. Friday night, there were calls for him to get the chop. If he doesn't deliver tonight, doesn't bring him the bacon, will his position be under the microscope once again?
No, well, you'll always have people jumping on the bandwagon, but no, I mean, listen, it's all we came to get through the group and then take it as it comes in. The next stages, he'll do that tonight. He'll secure a place in the knockout stages of the competition, and that was the aim. And then it's a knockout, and it's up to us then to, who knows? We've got as good a chance as anybody. I really mean that. It's a wide open World Cup. I don't think there's a fantastic team in it. I don't look at any team and think, oh my God, they are just so good. No one's got a chance with them. It's a wide open. There's 6 or 7 teams I think could win it, and I put England in that category. So I think we've still got a big chance.
Yeah, look, Martin was complaining about the bore draw, as you've been calling it, from Friday night against the States. But there have been these upsets. As you say, it's wide open. Japan beating Germany, Saudi beating Argentina. Who was it versus Belgium? Morocco beating Belgium. So there's David versus Goliath tonight, England versus Wales, this English-Welsh derby. I mean, you said you don't think it will happen, but it could.
It could, for sure. I mean, they've got some good players. The 3 lads at the back all play... 2 of them at Tottenham and one's at Bournemouth. Mepham's had a great season at Bournemouth. They've got Gareth Bale, as I say, the boy James, the lad James from Fulham's pacey, and Johnson from Notts Forest. They've got some lads, they've got some pace in their team, and the big centre forward Kiefer Moore's having a great season at Bournemouth as well. So they'll come out and give everything tonight. And we've all seen games where it's the underdog can turn it round if they work hard enough and they get the breaks. Nothing's impossible, but I'd be very surprised if England couldn't win tonight. Be very disappointed as well.
Now, Harry, I know you like a little flutter. Argentina have been very disappointing at the start. Brazil haven't really got going. Germany have been terrible. Who's your bet to win the Cup? I've got France in the sweepstake. Should I get excited?
Yeah, they're big chance. They've got a few injuries, haven't they? They've lost a couple of key players. They just seem to keep running into injuries at the moment to some of their big players. That's going to be a problem for them. I've gone with Portugal. I think Portugal have got a chance. They've got 3 lads at Man City, fantastic players. Fernandes, they've got Ronaldo. I think they could be a danger. They could have a good run in the competition. But I suppose the favourites, Argentina, was shocking first game, but they came back in the second game and played ever so well, so they'd have a chance. Brazil, you can never write Brazil off, can we? But it's a wide open competition.
Look, Harry Redknapp, thank you for always making time for GB News. We know you're a fan of the channel, and we so appreciate it. Thank you very much for tuning in and talking to us.
Guys.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's only 9.5 hours to go now, so I'll count off those hours to try and keep calm.
I didn't want to break the news to King Harry, as you call him, that you actually declared at 6 o'clock this morning you were supporting Wales tonight, because I'm not sure what he'd make of that.
Yeah, but I didn't tell him that.
No, that's what I'm saying. And look, we hope you enjoyed the programme this morning. There'll be more from us from 6 o'clock tomorrow, but for now we leave you in the capable